9th, 2023, opening at 7 p.m. Welcome to all those present here in the Council Chamber and to those who are watching from home. Before we commence, please turn off your mobile phones or place them on silent if you have not done so already, so the meeting is not disturbed. Masks are available, but it is optional. Please stand and remain silent during the acknowledgements. We acknowledge that the land that we meet on today is the traditional land of the Kaurna people and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the original custodians of the Adelaide region and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important to the Kaurna people today. We pay respect to the cultural authority of Aboriginal people visiting and attending from other areas of South Australia and Australia. On behalf of the City of Burnside, I gratefully acknowledge and pay respect to all those who have sacrificed their lives for this country and its people. We also consider in our thoughts all those who today are being affected by war around the globe, and especially those in Ukraine. Finally, we seek guidance in our debate as we make decisions that will impact on the lives of all who reside, study, work in or visit the City of Burnside. Grant us wisdom as we serve our community. Please be seated. You'll need to use your microphones to register your intent to enter the debate and wait until I've asked you to speak. Please turn off your microphone when you have finished speaking. Please be respectful and patient while listening to each speaker and do not interrupt or interject during the debate. Each person has 3 minutes with a warning bell at 2. Before I go to the agenda, I remind you that you're permitted only to speak once unless you are the mover, and if you have a question to a deputy or to staff, make sure you limit your preamble and get to your question quickly. Now to the agenda. We have apologies from Councillors Cornish and Councillor Hubel. We have no one with leave of absence. I have a declaration of interest to make at item 7 for 11.1 in that I am the patron of the East Torrens Kensington Gardens Tennis Club and therefore I will vacate the chamber during the debate. Councillor Zing.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would also like to declare conflict with item 11.1 and I'll also be leaving the chambers as well.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who has a declaration to make for any other item on the agenda? All right, if not, then I'll move on to confirmation of the minutes. I seek someone to move that those minutes are accepted unless there are any problem. Councillor Henschke.
Wish to declare a perceived conflict of interest, please.
Right, we've already moved on, but okay.
Yes, I'm sorry, didn't notice my button.
No, I didn't. Sorry.
Possible perception child at St Peter's Girls' School.
For which item?
For the item regarding the car park. Okay, I see it's not in this agenda yet.
I think that was the last council meeting.
That's an information report. Thank you.
Okay, it's not a problem for you. Okay, Councillor Davey, you're going to move the minutes. Any changes or alterations? All right, I need a seconder. Councillor Zing, you're happy to second those minutes. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Oh, I need to turn that on again. To our deputations. We have 5 deputations tonight. The first 2 deputations relate to the motion on notice regarding the proposed 40k speed limit in the McGill Kensington Gardens, and I'll invite Mr John Wiley to come forward first. And as I said, just your name and suburb. You don't have to give your complete address, Mr Wiley, and I'll turn my mic off and yours will be on.
It's John Wiley in McGill. Okay, Madam Mayor, Councillors, Mr Cowley, thank you very much indeed for giving me the chance to talk to you today. It's regarding having a 40 km/h speed limit in our area of Kensington Gardens and McGill. We see this as a major safety issue caused by traffic and a number of issues. The first one is the volume of traffic in McGill has increased markedly in recent years, particularly in rush hour periods. The traffic situation has generally worsened and vehicles are regularly exceeding the current speed limit of 50 kilometres per hour. Local residents have children attending McGill Primary School and Norwood International High School, including myself. My son goes to Norwood International. And both John Eaton, who's with me today, and I have seen near-miss accidents where children walking to and from school have almost been hit by a vehicle. And I saw one, a child almost hit by a car last November, right in front of my house. Cyclists and elderly people riding and walking in the area are also at risk. Wildlife such as koalas frequent the area and they're also in constant danger of being hit by cars when crossing the roads. So whilst we recognise and very much applaud the Council to reduce the speed limits from 50 to 40 across Burnside, we also feel very, very strongly that our precinct should be included as well. Councillor Harvey and Councillor Hallett have been particularly supportive, and also we've had great support from the Honourable John Gardner MP as well. This is a letter I received from Mr Gardner last week, and I've just highlighted a couple of the salient points from his letter. It essentially was giving me an update on what he was doing and underlining his support for what we're trying to achieve. He attended the meeting we had with Council in March and was very, very supportive of reducing the speed limit. He's also written to the Minister of Transport to undertake a very comprehensive road management plan. So he's very, very engaged and very supportive. And he made a very powerful speech earlier on this month in Parliament on the whole issue of traffic and road management, which again underlined his support for doing lots of initiatives to try and reduce speed and also to improve road safety. This is the area, and I think there's a handout in front of you that we live in. It's essentially bordered between Penfold Road, McGill Road and the Parade. We had a very constructive meeting with Barry Cant and Alan Harvey from Environment and Place in March. And Mr Harvey was good enough to go away, look at the area, look at the types of roads, whether they're arterial or collector roads. And he's actually come up with this as a proposed indicative boundary for consideration. So this is the area that we're discussing today that includes McGill Primary as well. I won't dwell on these. These have been put forward by Council and they're taken directly from your website. They're very powerful arguments, so I sort of feel I'm preaching to the converted, but I think it's just worthwhile reminding ourselves of the arguments for reducing the speed limit. This, I think, is another very important point I would like to touch on, and that's the reduction in risk of death by reducing the speed limit from 50 to 40. It is, in fact, not 48% as per your website. I'm not sure if it's still there, but it's actually 60%, which is a major, major reduction in risk of death by making that reduction from 50 to 40. Once again, I think it's a tremendous initiative that Council has done by putting forward this speed limit reduction in the respective precincts across Burnside. But the residents in our area that we petitioned so far have shown tremendous support, and the majority are strongly in favour of reducing it to 40 in our area as well. So given the tremendous benefits of reducing it to 40 kilometres per hour that I've outlined, and the fact that it may actually save a child's life, which is a very powerful reason to do this, I urge Council to consider this and take the necessary action and move this forward for approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Wiley. Are there any questions? Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, John, for coming in tonight and doing a very thorough and interesting presentation. Can I just ask, what issues have you noticed in particular with the McGill precinct development during and since it's been finished?
I'm relatively new to McGill. I came in December 20. In 21, I noticed the traffic wasn't too bad. In 22, I saw that the situation worsened quite markedly. That the traffic was built up on Penfield Road in McGill, and I think what's happened is a lot of what you'd call the rat runners are now starting off, particularly in rush hour and during school runs, where they're they're bypassing the main roads on McGill Road and Penfold Road, and they're cutting through, and that's where we've really seen a marked increase in volume in Ramallo Avenue, which is in our area, in that area I've showed you, and also in Giles Street, which is where John Eaton and I live as well. So it really has increased in the last 12 months.
Thank you. Councillor Dawes?
Mr Wiley, thank you for coming in. I'm just looking at this map of yours here, and I'm just looking at those streets which are outside of your dotted lines. And for instance, Ormond Avenue on the corner, the south-western corner, is not included.
Yeah.
It would make sense to me to include that, and I'm just looking at the eastern side as whether, it might be the next gentleman that can explain, why you've drawn the dotted lines there. But Ormond Avenue does stick out to me as one that should also be included. Have you got a comment on that?
Yeah, it's a good point. We actually presented this, as I said, in March to Mr. Cunt and Mr. Harvey, and we actually had the area, the perimeter at Penfold Road, McGill, all the way to the parade. But because of the type of roads they are, and I mentioned that on the slide, whether they're arterial or collector roads, I think Mr. Harvey, that's actually from Mr. Harvey's office. He sent that through as a potential perimeter. So we'd love the whole of the wall to be included in the 40, but we're only speaking to that, and I just thought it was worthwhile showing that because that's something that's come within the council as a recommendation. Yeah.
Are there any further questions? I just like to ask one quick question in relation to the rebuilding or the construction work that's happening at McGill Primary School. I mean, we just got over the Norwood International being built, and now we've got the primary school. Is that causing additional problems for parking and traffic and access and inflow?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, that is also causing a problem, but I think what would be probably worthwhile is John Eaton's presentation has got some very good photographs around McGill School, and I think that will highlight it quite clearly for you.
Thank you very much. All right, well, thank you very much for coming in. And I'll now ask Mr. Eaton to come forward. You can leave the mic on, that's all right. Thank you, Mr. Eaton.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on this. I'm a long-term resident. I've taught at Norwood High School for nearly a quarter of a century prior to going into the department and working on their legislation. And so I've got a long knowledge of what's going on there. So I'll commence. This is a very visual presentation, so you may wish to see the pictures on your screen. Located in the horse and buggy era, McGill Primary School now finds itself at a major congested intersection. This is McGill Road at 3:15 p.m. when the kids are dismissed from McGill Primary School. This is the school crossing on Penfold Road, which became an alternative to Portrush Road in bypassing our CBD. And here's the congestion at 3:15 on Penfold Road. It's forcing drivers to deviate into side streets. And this is what happens in one-way Adelaide Street alongside McGill School on the southern side. After the school drop-off, drivers exit via Giles Street or Ramallo Avenue to Penfold Road or into Park Street and onto McGill Road. Park Street is very congested. Where there has been one student death, another on Penfold Road, both in the mid-80s. Too many. And let's not forget what happened recently at Marriotteville High School. We need to avoid that. Our roads have since become much busier as metropolitan housing densities increase. Many more cars are now parked in streets, limiting the visibility of drivers. These cars are taller, four-wheel drive vehicles very often. And pedestrians, especially children, just don't have the visibility. I've witnessed also many near collisions, a game of Russian roulette, as cars parked on both sides of the street cause drivers to play a game of nerves with each other to see who gets through the gap first. New suburban developments such as Hamilton Hill are impacting a very narrow Glen Stewart Road, New Norton Summit Road that you can see there. Many of these cars turn left and deviate down side streets such as East Street, then into Giles Street or Ramallo Avenue. I monitor traffic at peak school times. In the half hour before school or following dismissal, as many as 70 to 80 cars, 20 to 30% of them travelling at 50k per hour or even higher. I did clock one at 80 kilometres an hour. I have a laser device to measure that. Drivers also speed along Ramallo Avenue past the Adventure Playground, where 50 to 60 kids might be playing at any one time. Council can take heart that that is a very, very popular facility, but there's a safety issue there. The 40k per hour speed limit in Kensington Park was mandated following concern for the safety of 1,700 students attending Pembroke School. We are hoping that the safety of 2,500 students attending McGill and Norwood will be of equal concern to you. A preliminary survey in Giles Street showed overwhelming support, and there is a similar pattern emerging in Ramallo Avenue as we gather signatures. A formal petition is now underway and it'll be completed in time for the next council meeting. We don't want speed humps, nor do we want these plantation-style lane restrictions. There is already enough lane restriction, but we do need a 40k per hour speed restriction. We'll complete the petition and it will then be up to you, councillors. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, John, for coming along tonight to clarify and respond to and support the first deputation. I'm interested in the development at Hamilton Hill, and I haven't yet been up there, but I understand from what you're saying that there is a considerable subdivision there now that has increased the traffic coming down McGill Road and then running through the streets. Is that what you're saying, into your streets?
Road, yes. That is a very congested area. A lot of cars are deviating away from that congestion there at McGill Road. They're deviating down into side streets to work their way through there are better places. I had the experience of taking my grandson to Urbray High School. He lives at Athelston. So I've actually had experience how to take the shortcuts down side streets, and I know exactly what's going on because of that. So, yeah, it's a real problem. It's also, I suggest, a suburb that's making a big impact on council services here because their local council is Adelaide Hills Council. There needs to be a redistribution there, I think. Yeah.
That's part of the constant ongoing debate between Campbelltown and Adelaide Hills.
I bet. Any other questions?
Yes, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr Eaton, for coming in tonight and taking what has obviously been a lot of time with doing slides, going out to the community, excuse me, and seeing how these cars are interacting with the traffic lights. How is a 40km/h speed limit going to make a difference in the community?
Well, I guess it's a question that some people, given an inch will take a yard. There will be people who ignore it, but hopefully it will be policed from time to time. It's a necessary step, I think, just to mandate a speed limit so that people know what the rules are, and then they can't complain if they get stopped by the police. So I hope it will be enforced. Even then, it's too fast for certain types of situations, particularly congested streets. But 40 km per hour seems to be the mandated standard for built-up areas. It's certainly the case in Sydney. Here, we're still coming to terms with the fact that we've got Sydney-style congestion happening amongst us. We've never had that before. I noticed a change which first began in the late 60s when the Darley Road ford, which had to be crossed during flood time, they decided to build a bridge, and that set the seal to that area becoming an official bypass of the Central Business District, akin to, obviously, Portrush Road. It's the other choice that motorists have.
Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
People who don't obey the current speed limit aren't going to obey a 40 kilometre per hour speed limit, are they?
Well,
whereas if you put in roundabouts and chicanes and humps, they've got no choice but to slow down.
Yes, that's a point. The problem with humps, if you've ever lived next to them, you will know the constant braking that occurs, and a lot of people learn the hard way and find out that they're airborne over a hump, and they're likely to end up in somebody's front room. So I don't think humps are the way to go. I think if you define a speed limit and people do that extra kilometre, the fine is going to be much greater if they're 10 or 20 kilometres per hour over the limit. And of course, there is a huge gain in safety by keeping to a 40 km per hour limit or lower. Some drivers drive sensibly and stay within the speed limit. I noticed on the council website that people were asked, do they support a 40 km per hour speed limit in their area? What they should have asked was, do you support a 40 km per hour speed limit in your street? The answer would have been very different. Everybody wants to drive down everybody else's street at 50 km per hour, but in their own, they want people to drive at 40 km per hour.
Thank you. Councillor Turnbull.
Oh, thank you, John, for coming in. It beggars belief to me, it always did, that the traffic wasn't thought of when Hamilton Hill was and is being developed. They should have made much more provision for it, because I could travel, I've got the grandchildren Atherstone thing too, and I go and look after them 3 times a week and travel that bit. I've stopped going to that intersection now. It's Russian roulette. You go, 1, 2, 3, shall I go? Yep. My question is, I don't know. My question...
Do you agree with me?
Yes, do you agree with me?
Sorry.
I know what you mean about that intersection. Do you agree with me?
Thank you. Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mr Eaton. There was a city master plan consultation, went out to every resident in the city of Burnside. Was that an opportunity for your community to let us know?
Yes, certainly.
Yes.
I can remember responding to that questionnaire.
And you raised awareness through that?
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
And the residue of that is still on the council website, of course, in terms of the response. So I was perhaps a little bit critical. I wouldn't have been originally, but I am now critical of the way that question was asked.
So, okay, so the next, one more question, if I may, please. Thank you. So the people you see, because you're observing the area daily, it seems that's the cohort to do with the school, and that would be the same bunch of people, and so if there were a few fines...
I think those who really speed are not people associated with the school. One I clocked at 80k per hour, and that was clearly a domestic because the same car was speeding up the hill at the same speed about 10 minutes later. So I wrote a little scenario to myself to explain why they should be behaving so recklessly. But the 80k per hour was a little before the students started to arrive for school.
Thank you very much for coming. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much for coming in, Mr Eaton.
And thank you for listening to me.
Now, we have 3 more deputations. They all relate to item 11.1, East Torrens Kensington Gardens Tennis Club, and the first person to speak is Mr James Partington. You now know the procedure, Mr Partington, so you can take over.
Good evening. My name is James Partington and I live at East Terrace, Kensington Gardens. I'd like to thank Council for the opportunity to speak about the community use of the 8 new tennis courts at East Terrace. As a resident ratepayer, I would also like to congratulate Council for providing an excellent tennis facility for club and community use. Regarding the new complex, the following is the current court arrangements. 1, courts 1 to 5 are for the club. Courts 6 to 8 are for the community. 2, the club can use all 8 courts for competition purposes. 3, commercial coaching is not allowed on courts 6 to 8. 4, the community can use courts 1 to 5, but only if they pay for them. I support Council's proposal for courts 6 to 8 being available for the community because the community has historically had use of 3 courts on East Terrace, and the community has been the major financial contributor to the 8 new tennis courts. There is no doubt that the redevelopment is good for the club with its 2 extra courts for competition. ETKG now has the most hard courts for competition use of all tennis clubs in Burnside Council. However, it has the least number of free community courts, with all other clubs having a minimum of 4 free courts. The East Terrace courts are the only community courts in Burnside that are locked. For this reason, I would like to see Council make courts 6 to 8 look more like a community facility. It is vital the community retain use of courts 6 to 8, considering Council's master plan proposes the 6 West Terrace courts are to be redeveloped. In relation to courts 1 to 5, it is surprising the community has to pay $12.50 per hour to use them. I believe courts 1 to 5 should be available free to the community when not in use. This is the case at Beaumont, Burnside and Glenunga tennis clubs. Until 2014, ETKG had a policy of sharing the 6 club courts between coach and members. Following 2014, it is my understanding that 6 club courts were continued to be shared between coach and members. I believe Council has an obligation to continue the community usage of courts 6 to 8 for the following reasons. Point 1, community is the main financial contributor to the new courts. Point 2, the history of the 3 community courts being in East Terrace. Point 3, the coach already uses 5 courts 6 days a week, paying the club a fee set by the club. And point 4, I believe ETKG pays Council $1 per year court rental. The option of allowing the coach to have 6 courts is, number 1, unfair to the community and 200 club members. Number 2, it is contrary to the current signage stating 8 courts are available for club and community. And number 3, it is contrary to the ratepayer's expectation that council will look after the interests of the community, not the interests of a business. It is important that council be objective, not subjective with the court lease, as club coaches will inevitably come and go over time, but there will always be community wanting access to East Terrace courts. I believe the council proposal strikes a fair and reasonable balance of sharing the courts between the coach, club members and community, and I congratulate the council for having built the 8 new courts. I support the council proposal of courts 1 to 5 for the club and courts 6 to 8 for the community. Thank you for letting me give my deputation.
Thank you, Mr Partington. Questions, anyone? If there are no questions... Oh, Councillor Davey?
Thank you very much for coming along tonight and giving a very clear outline to us of the situation from your experience. Are you a club member or a coach? I didn't hear, sorry, at the beginning.
I am a tennis coach. I'm a tennis coach.
Right.
And I did coach at ETKG from 1992 to 2014. At that time, we did share the courts. I had use of 4 courts and club members had use of 2 courts. But I do live in East Terrace, Kensington Gardens, so I'm a tennis player, so I do enjoy using the community courts.
Thank you.
Councillor Harvey?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, James, for coming in tonight. In relation to open, free community courts and access to those courts, what are the comparisons with other clubs in Burnside?
Thanks for the question. Well, there's the 3 other hardcourt tennis clubs in Burnside. There's Burnside Tennis Club, Glenunga Tennis Club and Beaumont Tennis Club. All those clubs have club coaches, they have community wanting to use the courts, and they have club members wanting to use the courts. Burnside Tennis Club has 4 tennis courts. All of those courts are open to the community. We have Glenunga Tennis Club has 5 tennis courts, and all of those 5 courts are open to the community, all unlocked. And Beaumont Tennis Club has 7 tennis courts, and 4 of those courts are open and unlocked to the community.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Henschke?
Good evening, thank you. You referred to the courts 6 to 8 not looking like they were for the community because they're locked. So
that's correct.
You're asking for them to be unlocked on ongoing every hour of the day.
Thanks for the question. Before the redevelopment, those 3 community courts on East Terrace were set away from the ETKG courts, and they had no side fences, so it was obvious they were community courts.
Okay.
Now that those community courts are attached pretty much to the top 5 courts,
right,
and locked, people driving past may think they're not community courts. I think it's excellent there's a community court sign been put up, but I know there was a handle to the attached to court gate, the gate of court 6, and that's been taken down. But I think anything that can make it look like more like a community court would be great.
Great, thank you.
I don't see any other people asking questions, so I will now move. Thank you very much, Mr Partington, for coming in, and now move to Mr Alan Wells to come and speak next.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr Cowley, councillors. My name's Alan Wells. I've been a committee member of ETKG Tennis Club now for 23 years and still counting. I'm currently the Vice President of the club. James has explained the 8 new courts, and we are delighted with the 8 new courts and the redevelopment of our corner, we call it our corner of the park. I think it's excellent facility for everybody. And I think right at the start, I agreed to the facility development on the basis that there would be 8 new courts for club priority use. And I'd like to support that. It is club priority use, but they are available for everybody. I believe, personally, I think council is missing out on an opportunity to have those courts utilised as fully as they could be. Before the wetlands project, there were 6 club courts, as we said. They were for club competition, team practice, club social play, and club coaching, plus public hire. After the wetlands, there are 8 courts available. They are for club priority use, as was stated right back at the start. We requested the Book a Court system, Tennis Australia system, be supplied and installed with the courts to enable the club to offer easy online public access to all 8 courts, day and night. And they're the only courts in Burnside that have this facility associated with them, the only courts that are available for night use. And the club assumed that the use of those courts would be as before. Competition, practice, social and club coaching. We also envisaged that it would be a user-paid approach for all, as previously, and the club would maintain all 8 courts. Now, much has been made of the investment in the installation of those courts and the investment in the infrastructure. Yes, I agree. The ratepayers contributed to that. I'm not sure exactly how much. Federal government committed $3 million to the whole exercise. But it neglects totally the maintenance costs of those courts. At the moment, all other public courts around the place are maintained by council at general ratepayers' expense. We have the opportunity with these 8 courts to have their maintenance of all 8 run by the club, with tennis players contributing to that maintenance cost and relieving other non-tennis playing ratepayers of that cost. I think that's probably a good idea, and I think that's the way things are going in the future. So the 3 community courts at the bottom of the 8 courts, I presume the other 5 courts are non-community courts. I really don't understand the distinction, because I've always thought that the 8 courts would be equivalent or accessible to the community. The pros of the current arrangement is the public gets free daytime use of the 3 brand new competition standard courts. And make no mistake, these courts are damn sight better than those 3 that they did have access to. So to pay a small fee to get onto these courts is not a big deal in my book. Against the current arrangement, the 3 community courts, I believe, are underutilised, but we have no data from the booking system to validate that. It's only ad hoc use. The club coaching restrictions have seen about 100 applicants in the last 6 months denied access to the coach to learn a new outdoor sport. The Booker Court management of the public access is a significant volunteer workload to make that work the way we've got it set up at the moment, bastardising the existing the Booker Court system just to make that work. It's very difficult. And the club basic membership fee, which allows them to access the courts for nothing, it's been devalued by the fact that there are courts for nothing right next to the other 5 courts. It just doesn't make sense to me. Our proposal, don't differentiate the courts, make them all the same. The court should be booked online, and that's a simple 30-second activity. They should include the same usage fee, but that should not necessarily be the $12.50 that's the current booking fee for council courts. It could be much less. We're quite happy to have it less. Coaching should be limited perhaps to 6 courts, basically, as we had before.
Mr Wells, you've had your 5 minutes.
Thank you. That's it.
You finished then? Okay, thank you. Any questions? Yes, Councillor Dawes.
Alan, a couple of questions for
Yes.
you. Under the old configuration, we had 2 plus 2 plus 2.
Yes.
How many courts were reserved for the club coach?
Club coach could use all 6. The latest provision was that should a club member come up whilst coaching was on, that the coach would retract to 5 courts and allow that member on.
So 5, I guess, was the allocation.
5 was allocated, but for the past 3 or 4 years he'd been using 6. Now that was this coach, and we had a similar arrangement with the previous coach.
Okay. Second question for you. Having a club coach, and you've got a club coach who is high calibre, you know, he's again won
Indeed.
Tennis SA State Coach of the Year, he's won it 3 times, I think. What are the advantages to the club from a tennis perspective and from a financial perspective to have a club coach of that calibre?
The club coach pays for his use for the courts. That is written into his contract. The other thing is he brings in a lot of juniors into the club. Every year the juniors turn over, about 30 juniors every year come into the club via the coach. Another 30 go out, or hopefully less than that go out. He supports the junior coordinator in building teams, selecting teams at the start of each season. And just having the coach there brings a lot of tennis playing traffic to the facility, and they pick up on the fact there's a club there, and some of them are likely to join the club. He's a great asset to the club to have the coach in place. Yes, he pays his way, as all coaches do, and I would have to say he gets a favourable deal because of all the additional input to the club.
Thank you. I don't have anyone else here to ask a question, so thank you very much, Mr Wells. And now I'll ask Mr Venning to come forward.
Good evening, Mayor, CEO, councillors. Justin Venning, East Torrens Kensington Gardens Club President, resident of Rosalind Park. Firstly, I'd like to thank Council for the opportunity of speaking tonight, and for Alan for his deputation and his assistance. I would like to point out a few items which are missing or I believe to be incorrect from the discussion points presented to you. Firstly, at all times we have wished for the maximum usage of all 8 tennis courts, including the public. The strategic plan is not maximised when courts which could be used are not available to be used. Although the report states that all costs associated with maintaining and renewing courts 6 to 8 sits with council, it is the club who is constantly cleaning and sweeping these courts so that the surface is not dangerous to players, either club or public. Over the decades, ETKG has proved to council its ability to maintain and resurface courts and club rooms with minimal input of funds from council. The point of terms being supported by both parties is not quite correct. We did not agree to commercial coaching on courts 6 to 8 not to be permitted. At no time was this agreed upon, despite the report before you indicating that it was. The club relies strongly on the vibrancy of the coach to help provide players to the club and for the club to prosper. It should also be noted the club coach is a multiple state and national award winner and one of the most highly decorated coaches in the country. We never asked for coach access we never asked for court access solely for a commercial coach. Please note item 39.5, which advises of our proposed coach usage. I don't believe this to be an excessive amount of use. In relation to the proposed alternatives, these options have not previously been presented to us, and in fact the second proposal is actually in excess of what we have asked for, and in fact reduces community access to courts, not what we want. Nor do we wish other coaches within the reserve to be disadvantaged. I'd like to reiterate what we have proposed in the document presented to you by us. That is that the coach is willing to pay a higher charge for courts 6 to 8, either to council or the club. In fact, nobody currently is able to hire these courts. The only courts, I believe, in the council, we are aware of this occurring. If funds from booking courts were to go to the club and our proposal approved, ETKG would be responsible for the maintenance and renewal of courts 6 to 8, not ratepayers who do not use the courts. We hope for a resolution which promotes the maximum use of our great courts and retains the club viable for another 100+ years. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Venny. Is there anyone who wishes to ask Mr. Venny a question? Yes, Councillor Henschke.
Hello, good evening. Now, with courts 6 to 8, if there was some debris, possum droppings or whatever, you know, on that section of the court, yes, and it wasn't cleaned up, what happens? Does it get blown into the other courts? How do you manage that if we don't clean it up quickly enough for you? What would happen?
Besides when a couple of times it's rained causing lots of debris on those courts, I don't believe council has cleaned those courts. I'll stand corrected, but I don't believe that has occurred. Due to the layout of the courts, and there is now a lip around all the courts, virtually all debris stays within the perimeter of each bank of courts. We're lucky we have a few volunteers, and we've spent approximately just over $5,000 on equipment to clean those courts since the redevelopment. It includes 2 blowers, 1 large blower and a large vacuum. It is a problem with the amount of trees that are nearby, less so possum droppings now than what it used to be, but we now have more debris, just tree debris on the courts, which unfortunately has nowhere to get out. So it is up to our volunteers constantly, sweeping courts.
Councillor Hallett.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. And the question I've got is that, and it seems to be perhaps different, my understanding is different to the clubs, and based on what happened for the first 12 months with the courts being all the peak times, so that's after school, weekends, basically all our courts were booked out over those times by the coach. And by booking those out at all the peak times, it's not just the public that can't get onto the courts, your own members can't get on. And I'm wondering, what's the benefits to the club of not allowing their own members to get on the courts?
Firstly, I don't believe it was 12 months. It was a very short period of time, to be honest. And the courts have only been finished for just...
It was all summer and it went right into winter last year.
As Alan said before, there is an agreement that members have access to courts. So if a member was to turn up and courts were used by the coach, that can't be the case now anyway, because there is those bottom 3 courts. But if we were allowed to, for I think it's 6 hours that we're asking for, if for the use of 8 courts, there would be an understanding that a court would have to be available for members to use. if they were to turn up. Yes.
Councillor Harvey. Sorry, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Justin, for coming in tonight. My question is, do you agree to courts 6, 7 and 8 being locked and the potential confusion that this causes with the community?
I actually do. As much as anything for the so that the courts aren't degraded. I mean, we have had bikes, skateboards. It's not an ideal situation having hard items on the court. It's only going to shorten the period of time that the courts that needs to be maintained. Sorry, can you repeat your question? There's another part to it. Sorry.
Sorry?
Can you repeat the question again?
My question was, do you agree to courts 6, 7 and 8, the gate being locked, which can cause confusion to the community?
The gate is locked, correct. However, currently there is a notice on the fence telling a code to put into a keypad, which is part of the Book of Court system, which unlocks the gate straight away. So the other thing is that it does allow for the courts to be locked at night, so that nothing untoward can happen on those courts at night time. Having them open all the time, well, I'll leave that to your imagination.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Venning, for coming in, and I'll now move to the next part of the meeting. What I would like to do before we I take any suggestions from councillors, is I'd like to just run through the reports, determine which ones need to be withdrawn for debate and which ones we can identify straight away and vote on, and then we'll, if anyone wishes to change the agenda in some way, then they may so wish to move, as has been indicated to me. So I'll first of all call for anyone who wishes to withdraw 11.1. Councillor Hallett. 11.2, Tusmore Reserve Waiting Pool. Sorry, Councillor Hallett, can you turn your mic off unless you're pulling that one as well? All right. Councillor Dawes.
I'll move it.
You'd like to move the Tusmore Waiting Pool. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Jennings. All those in favour? Against? Carried. 11.3, Councillor Davey, you wish to withdraw it?
Thank you.
Thank you. 11.4, draft asset management plans. These are drafts, and we'd like to, Councillor Davey, you wish to withdraw? Final report, internal review. Councillor Davey. This one must be done tonight. 11.6. Can I have a mover?
I'll pull that one, thanks.
Sorry, Councillor Davey wishes to withdraw that one as well.
Thank you.
Minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee. Can I have a mover? Councillor Hallett?
No,
No, you have questions? All right.
Yeah.
Mayor's report. Councillor Hallett, can you turn yours off unless you wish to? Someone like to move the Mayor's report? Thank you, Councillor Zing. Sorry, no, Councillor Turnbull had done the right thing, used her button. So Councillor Turnbull has moved it. Councillor Davies seconded. All those in favour? Against? Carried. So there are 2 gone. Now, 11.1, East Torrens Kensington Gardens Tennis Club is the first on the list. Councillor, did you wish to move something as some alternative?
I'm just wanting to bring 13.1 forward if possible. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. I need to get a second. I'm not moving it to in front of the queue.
No.
But in terms of moving it to second item, that's up to the rest of the councillors to determine whether that's what you wish to do or not. So Councillor Hatter suggested that she'd like to move the motion on noticed so that we debate it after 11.1. So Councillor Harvey has moved it. Councillor Davey has seconded it.
Thank
so
you.
make sure you use your microphone, press your buttons, please. Those in favour, just an indication. Okay, so we'll move the 40K motion on notice to the second item for debate tonight. Obviously, if you wish to stay, those people who want to stay, you're welcome to stay. If you wanted to go home and watch it on live stream, that's up to you as well. I will now need to vacate the chair so that this item 11.1 can be debated.
Thank you, councillors. I now ask for nominations for acting chair position. Do I have any nominations?
Can I speak?
Certainly. I don't have the screen in front of me. Sorry,
I'd like to
councillor.
nominate Councillor Dawes to be chairperson.
Councillor Dawes, you willing to accept the nomination? Do I have any further nominations? No? No further nominations. Thank you, Councillor Dawes. If you could come forward, I'll hand over your role as acting chair. I had no other nominations. Thank you, Councillor Dawes.
Be kind to me, please, councillors. All right, now I think Councillor Hallett has got the chair, so over to you, Councillor Hallett.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the administration for their efforts managing the protracted negotiations behind this report and the arising recommendations. I also thank those who made deputations in this regard this evening. I support the recommendations in the report and encourage members to do the same. However, I'm also suggesting two variations as follows. For clarity purposes, change recommendation 1.4 to read access to courts 1 to 5 to be managed through the Tennis Australia's Booker Court system with higher fees for the community consistent with Council's annually adopted fees and charges schedule excluding club member use, and add coach court hire fees to be set by the club. Secondly, to add a third recommendation as follows. 3, Council moves the side gate to the community courts 6, 7 and 8. And can I speak to that now?
Can we just wait until it comes up on the screen, Councillor Hallett, please?
No, because I need to do it. Do you want that? Can I have it back?
You said there were two.
Yeah, there are
Yeah,
two.
okay.
There's a change to 1.4 and a new third resolution. Thank you. So now can I speak to my motion?
Go right ahead, please.
Thank you. The only real difference between what the club is requesting and what the administration is recommending is for the club to have access to one further community court, Court 6, for a private tennis coaching business, as well as 8 additional hours to book any court at times of his choosing. What the club is proposing is not fair to the community who paid for the new courts, or indeed to their own members who will also be unable to access the courts due to them being booked out for commercial coaching lessons. Prior to master plan developments, there were 3 community courts and 6 club courts. The community courts were open and separate to the club courts, which were used exclusively by the club. As part of negotiations for the development of the new tennis facilities, it's my understanding that the club did agree to having 5 new competition grade courts, as well as the ability to use the 3 new community courts for competition and tournament purposes. Once the courts were operational, the commercial coach booked out all peak periods across all 8 courts, and that did happen. For all of the first summer, the 3 community courts, while technically available, were in fact all reserved for the coach. The community courts were also locked, not badged as council community courts, and for all intents and purposes were seen as belonging to the club. In about March 22, Kensington Gardens Reserve Supporters Group commenced lobbying for community access. Eventually, the code entry system was functional and commercial coaching on the 3 community courts was ceased. Community court signage was erected in April of this year. Around about October last year, the club approached council to advise that they now wanted 6 courts. All 8 tennis courts were paid for by the public purse at a cost of $1.03 million, with no financial contribution from the club. Given the history, public funding, the right of the community to fairly share this facility, I'd like to urge members to support the recommendations with my 2 variations. Thank you.
Is there a seconder there? Seconder, please. Which is it? Joe. It's Joe. Right. Is Joe, is your seconding? Is that correct? Okay. Do you want to speak or do you want to?
I'll reserve my right.
Okay. So the next person to speak is it Ted? Ted. So Councillor Jennings, I've got to be careful here. Sorry, Councillor Jennings.
So, looking over the minutes last week and looking over Google Maps, I popped down there today to investigate further and absolutely flabbergasted at the amount of tennis courts in Kensington Gardens. It probably should be called Tennis Park. So, there is courts that are obviously of international standard. There are courts that are plain old Wimbledon grass courts, and then there is this lovely asphalt, like a backyard court. So so I got back to the Kensington, the courts that we are East Torrens courts that we are speaking of, and I couldn't really see which ones we could use. It all looks very East Torrens. So, yeah, just really talking.
Have you finished?
I have.
Thank you. Councillor Davey is next.
Thank you, Chairman Dawes. Thank you, Councillor Hallett, for your motion, and thank you to the people who've come here tonight to make their case. And thank you to the staff who I know have spent a lot of time working through all of the complexities of all of the issues. I think this is a reasonable outcome in terms of how we can best manage these wonderful new courts and utilise them so that the tennis club can operate, as well as the community have access to the courts. And I think removing the locking mechanism is quite fair and reasonable. I don't know any other courts in the city of Burnside that are locked at night. I understand the reservations for that, but I think our community is pretty good in terms of respecting new investments and wonderful new facilities. I certainly hope that's the case. So I'm happy to support this tonight and hope everybody else will too.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. And next is Councillor Turnbull.
Thank you, Acting Chair. And thank you, Councillor Hallett. Look, I think that's an excellent idea. I was going to ask that question, but I didn't know how to frame it as a question. But I'm glad to see that the lease is for 5 years in the first instance. This gives both council and club time to consult for the best outcome. It seems to me that any club, sporting club, that has a 5x5x5 lease or a 7x7x7, they become quite entitled. And I think there needs to have a space in between so that both the club and the council consult about behaviour, maintenance, all those sort of issues. So I was really glad to see that. But I'm having trouble with the peppercorn rent. It's very feudal. It's an arrangement that Burnside Council has with many of our sporting facilities. Really, surely there needs to be some discussion on this. Maybe it can come as a motion at some stage, because we as a council have deferred many projects in order to rein in our costs to keep the rates down. And here we are, only charging $1 a year per rent. That's just, to me, it's ludicrous. I think a further motion in notice, watch this space, it's coming. Especially as the club's sort of demanding more and more. The community and our ratepayers need all the consideration for the proposed lease arrangement from the club. And so that's why I support Councillor Hallett's excellent recommendation. And I also think that East Torrens Kensington Gardens Tennis Club is getting a pretty good deal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turnbull. Over to Councillor Hinchke.
Thank you, Acting Chair. I have a question for the administration, if I may, and then I'll speak. I'm concerned about the maintenance of the courts, the council community courts, and how we're going to maintain them to the standard expected as an interface to these professional courts, because we are stretched. For example, the Tusmore Park tennis courts do have, the possum poo and the debris on them, and I've recently received a request from a resident to have it cleaned up because it's quite slippery. So we are challenged with our city clean, we have so many pressures. The question is, how will council administration cope with this? And is there a way of working with the club? They have the equipment. Could there be some arrangements between council and the club to foster partnership in maintenance?
Through Mr Acting Chair, if I can refer that to Mr Kent.
Through the Acting Chair, thank you for the question. To respond to your Tusmore Courts question, first of all, that's actually at the end of their current asset life, and we actually have a capital project within the capital programme next year to replace those courts or resurface those courts. So they're getting to the point now where we actually intervene and replace them rather than regular maintenance, which is consistent with all of our courts throughout the city. Much like all of our public courts that are not aligned with clubs or memberships or leases, we do have a responsibility to maintain those courts and also ensure that they're fit for purpose, as we do. And I can assure you that we have, over the last 12 months, at certain occasions, attended to those courts in question. Having said that, much like any sporting organisation that uses any of council's community assets, they also have a responsibility to make sure it's suitable for purpose prior to them entering into tournament and competitions, much like our Aussie Rules Footy Club or a soccer club prior to doing so. So yes, we absolutely have a relationship and a collaboration with each of our member groups to ensure that they're all fit for purpose and we work together.
Now, you've turned your microphone off, so I've got Councillor Wilkins next, so you only asked a question there, so you can still speak to the motion. So over to Councillor Wilkins.
Thank you, Mr Acting Mayor, and thank you to those gentlemen who came to speak this evening on this topic. I haven't actually played on these courts. I think it's a fabulous rehabilitation and of this playing space for the community. I support Councillor Hallett's motion, but I'm wondering if these, through you, Acting Mayor, is there some arrangement that can be made, say, after 6 months of use, that the staff could actually just touch base with the tennis club and see that all is running well, and is there any improvements that can be made, etc., etc. Is this planned at all by staff in this arrangement? That's my question.
Through Mr. Acting Chair, our staff have regular dialogue with the club, so I've got no doubt that they'll be regularly interplay to gain understanding how things are working. So I've got no concerns in that space. That'll happen as a matter of course.
Thank you.
So that was a question, I think. Oh, yes. Yeah, but so you can still speak. So now, Councillor Henske, are you going to ask, or are you going to speak or not?
Thank you. Actually, I have another question, if I may. Thank you. Item 1.1 says access to the court is available for the community. Technically, the coach could also hire the court in the same way. Is that correct?
I might just refer that to Mr. Cant. Thank you.
Through the acting presiding member, no. So courts 6 to 8, with the exception of evening time, are not available to be booked. So they are open for access and free community use during that time. That was deliberately intended to maximise community as well as club and competition use during that period, because we've gone from 9 courts to 8 in total.
I have no one else, but Councillor Harvey, you haven't spoken yet. Oh, sorry, he's got, sorry, you were the last one. I thought you weren't going to speak. Okay, so first of all, it is Councillor Jones.
Can I ask a question, if I may? Presumably these courts, the coach is using them after school, so kind of earlier in the day than when adults might be wanting to use these courts. Is there going to be any review? So we're going to look pretty stupid if we make these courts free for community use and nobody uses the bloody things. So is there going to be someone coming back and saying, guys, we've got 3 empty courts that kids could be being coached on and they're vacant?
Thank you, Mr. Acting Chair. I might refer that to Mr. Cant.
Through your worship, and much like the tennis club deputation says, it's our interest to ensure that these assets are activated and have maximum use. Absolutely, if we monitor these use and we believe that they're not being used to its full capacity, we will look at that, and if necessary, we'll bring it back to council for consideration. We'll do that as a matter of course with any of our community assets if we're not believe they're being maximised.
Thank you, Mr. Cant. Now, I'm just checking before I go to Councillor Harvey as a seconder. Nobody else? Over you, Councillor Harvey. Oh, Lillian, you've come in. Yeah. Okay. Are you a question, or what are you doing?
I'd just like to speak.
Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you. Briefly. Thank you, Councillor Jones, for your remark then. It just seems like after hearing the deputations tonight that there needs to be more engagement between the council and the club to develop a peaceful arrangement and a productive arrangement, and there seems to be some technical things like gates and maintenance sounded kind of doable, but yeah, I'm just uncomfortable going forward with the motion, and I do really believe there needs to be, things need to be sorted out a little bit more, and we've got some new information tonight from the club about their views, and particularly the capability of the coach. Hearing that tonight, that was very interesting, and the importance of that capability in generating a strong tennis culture and outputs. Thank you. But I'll wait to hear the second to sum up as well before I decide. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hensky. Right, now, Councillor Harvey for the third time. It's your opportunity. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Acting Chair. You're doing a sterling job there. I support the recommendations of Councillor Hallett that she's put up and the motion, and totally agree that the gate be removed to courts 6, 7 and 8. This needs to be clearly identified by our residents that it is definitely for community use. And I also agree with Councillor Turnbull that the ETKG Club are on a very good deal. Thank you.
Now, would you like to sum up, Councillor Hallett?
No, I think that it's fairly clear, unless there's any other questions. But I think that that it's been covered.
Thank you, Councillor Hallett. Right, it's now time to vote. Those in favour of the motion? Those against? Thank you very much. It is passed. Carried. Can we call the Mayor in, please?
Thank you, Councillor Dawes, for taking the chair. And now we did agree to move the motion on notice forward. So, Councillor Harvey, you are to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. Do I need to read out the motion? No. Thank you.
Unless you're changing it, no, because it's already on the agenda papers.
Thank you, Mayor. Unfortunately, Kensington Gardens and McGill were not included in the master plan last year for a 40-kilometre-hour consideration and community consultation. We have 2 schools in these areas, McGill Primary and Norwood International High Schools. I and Councillor Hallett have met with the principals of these schools who fully support a proposed 40-kilometre-hour zone and community consultation, and they say it can't come soon enough. They both highlighted their concerns for public safety, parking and rat running around the side streets of their schools. Their concerns are for their students and the community, as are mine and Councillor Hallett's. This has escalated with McGill Village redevelopment now placing only 1 lane going forward in all directions at the traffic lights. This must be included for your consideration into the 23-24 budget. We have had 2 excellent deputations from concerned residents who I thank, and their increased support with a petition and highlighting near misses of school children and the excessive speed and rat running. There are a total, as mentioned, of 2,500 students attending these schools every day, going to school and returning home from school. there is the addition of a new housing development of 400 houses in Hamilton Hill off McGill Road. That is a potential minimum of a further 400 plus cars added to the roads around these schools. The traffic is gridlocked from McGill Road to Kensington Road at times, which I have witnessed many times. Motorists become frustrated and impatient, resulting in turning into the very narrow side street either side of Penfold Road to escape the traffic light chaos. Safer streets means more opportunities for cycling, walking, running and being active without the fear of speeding hoons, plus also saving our wildlife. Speed humps are not the answer, however, action is. This proposal has the full support of MP John Gardner and has been raised by him in Parliament. He has also contacted Tom Koutsotonis for support. What price is put on potentially saving lives? I ask you to please support this motion now to get it into the budget and keep our community safe. Whether it be school children, the elderly, walkers, cyclists, our whole community deserve and have the right to feel safe. Thank you.
I seek a seconder. Councillor Hallett, you wish to speak or reserve your right?
I reserve my right, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor. I wish to move a slight amendment to this, following on some information that we've heard tonight. A new Part 3 that Council, we've already got that, works with the Adelaide Hills Council to manage the volumes of traffic now flowing from the Hamilton Hill subdivision through the streets of McGill. And that's just to add that I wasn't aware of the extent of the Hamilton Hill subdivision. I mean, it's great that we've got a whole lot of new homes there, but from what we've heard tonight from our deputies and fellow councillors, there are issues, and Councillor Turnbull with her experience, there are volumes of traffic coming from this estate down through the, I guess, McGill Road, feeding into McGill Road, and then through all the back streets running. And I think it would be really beneficial if we set up a communication between our council and Adelaide Hills Council, who I believe are responsible for that subdivision. I mean, who knows what traffic controls they can put in place, but I think that would be possible. I'd be interested in if the CEO has a comment on that to say if that's doable.
Through you, Mayor, and I'm not saying I disagree with the sentiment of what Councillor Davey is proposing, but unfortunately it's quite different to what's before us. So I'd suggest the way of dealing with it, it's actually more than an amendment. If council was of a mind, it could be dealt with as a motion without notice after we've dealt with this one. But it's more than an amendment because it is a substantial change to what's before you. It's adding a very new material. That's my advice, Madam.
Can I add something else too? There's another school involved, and that's on Campbelltown side of McGill Road, which is St Joseph's. So the issues go beyond just the two schools. I'm not questioning your concerns, but there are people who run to get to St Joseph's School on the Campbelltown side of McGill Road, potentially. We've also got the massive additional number of people who are coming down from Hamilton Hill, which is right next door to Ross Trevor College. And so we're actually looking at two other potential councils that might be needed to have a discussion about the traffic management in that area generally. So I'm not even wondering if it's necessary to have a motion at all, that if you instructed the CEO to negotiate or to talk with Campbelltown and Adelaide Hills Council about the traffic issues, it might be something that needs to go to state government in terms of managing that road, because you've got not just the Hamilton Hill, but you've also got the traffic coming down from Norton Summit, which is also increasing every year as people are coming down from the hills and from Norton Summit to come to schools down in the city, or to go into the city from where they live, Summertown, Norton Summit, etc. So I'm being guided by the direction of the council on this. Do you want to have a specific motion, or are you happy for us to take it on board that there would be some communication with the other two councils about the issues to do with traffic? Are you happy with that? I haven't shared it with you either.
Madam Mayor, just a suggestion.
Yes.
Perhaps propose that you deal with the motion that's before you.
First.
Deal with that first?
Yep, but I just wanted to raise it for thoughts.
And then certainly come back to this item and then determine how you wish to go forward.
All right. So, Councillor Councillor Davey, you happy for us to come back to this, deal with this, the existing issue first? So now, Councillor Jones.
Colleagues, I'm not against 40-kilometre-hour zones, but I am going to oppose this motion. The most important reason is only 2 weeks ago we approved a budget, and yet predictably here we are 2 weeks later adding spending into that budget. So for me, that's as I have previously flagged, I'm against us agreeing budget and then sneaking in our own projects back into the budget contrary to the process. So that's reason number one. Reason number two, I think this is ad hocery. We've got the city master plan. We've done the consultation on the 5 zones, which we're in the middle of the process. We've all seen the feedback. Other than Beulah Park, the feedback's been pretty underwhelming, frankly. So we need to decide whether we're going to go to the Minister for approval. And there's by no means certain that approval will be granted. So I'd have to say, if it's not granted in those areas, it's a bit of a waste of time trying for McGill without seeing what happens. And then there's other areas. Linden Park, people say to me, well, why weren't we consulted to have 40-kilometre-per-hour zone? There's a primary school in Linden Park as well. Burnside, there's a primary school in Burnside. Why don't we have a 40-kilometre-per-hour zone there as well? There's a primary school in Stonyfell. Why don't we have a 40-kilometre-per-hour zone there as well? So I think if we're going to do this, it needs to be on a holistic basis. So let's wait and see what's happened for the first 5 zones. And after that, as part of a whole of city master plan, we then decide whether to move to certain other zones. So I can't support the motion on that basis either. And thirdly, I think the idea that 40-kilometre-hour zones are panaceas for traffic problems is just wrong. If there are specific problems on specific roads, fix them with specific solutions rather than having blanket 40-kilometre-hour zones on roads that don't need them. If people are rat running down the streets, then fix that problems. And there are well understood ways of fixing those problems. Roundabouts, chicanes, doesn't have to be the particularly annoying road humps, although they do slow down traffic. And the fact is, they're there permanently, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, slowing down traffic. Unlike vague threats that you might get caught by SAPOL, well, probably you won't. Are we giving any more resources to SAPOL to police these areas? No. So they'll only come here if they think they're going to make fine revenue out of it. So, you know, you might be lucky they'll decide it's a little gold mine for them, but chances are they won't. So, look, alas, I can't support the motion.
Councillor Dawes.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no argument that this is the area that we must look at next. And I do recall when we did the master plan discussions in the last council that the previous Kingston Gardens McGill councillors were adamant that they did see that the McGill area was next in line to have a discussion on the 40 kilometres per hour. I remember that distinctly. I also remember more distinctly 2 weeks ago that, this is where I'm kind of with Councillor Jones here, that 15 minutes after we agreed to the draft budget, we changed it. And 2 weeks later, we again are trying to change it. And there are things in our ward that we wanted to go ahead with, and we said, no, we won't, because we want to have as close as possible to a break-even budget. So I have no argument of what the two gentlemen presented tonight. I think they are spot on. I do believe that we need to see what the results are of the 40 kilometres per hour consultation that has just finished, and see how that translates to what we discuss at probably the next council meeting or the one thereafter, and that might inform us as to the best way of looking at the McGill Kensington Gardens. I did note though that when we did discuss Kensington Gardens McGill, we just concentrated on McGill. We didn't even discuss the other side of the page. So I believe there's still a bit more, not work to do, but I believe that we need to first of all discuss what we're doing now with the 40 kilometres per hour in about 6 suburbs, see what the results are. I'd love to know what Unley City Council, whether they believe this is the panacea, as you used that term, Councillor Jones. But I think in McGill, with so many problems there and with the narrow streets, I do believe it's the next area for us to do that consultation.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question first of the administration. Is it at all possible that we could use, and taking on board the comments of 2 of our colleagues, that this funding, 23,000, could come from savings from this year's budget? Is that at all possible?
Actually, through Madam Mayor, I'll just have a little chat to Karishma before I answer that one. Through Madam Mayor, I think as I alluded to, last meeting, we're currently running at a deficit, and we're running on budget. Sorry, we are running at deficit. So no, I haven't got the ability this financial year to find the money. I'm sorry.
Councillor Turnbull.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. To me, this is urgent. More people up there. It's a different sort of scenario because of Hamilton Hill, really. Lots of cars coming down there, more people, more kids going to the schools there. And if you have actually gone there before school and after school like I have, it's horrendous. It's quite harrowing. I won't even use that intersection anymore because it's so bad. I think something must be done. And sneaking in this project may just save lives, particularly of children. So I would like to see it snuck in. And actually, I love road humps. It slows down the traffic and it messes with the suspension. So I would be quite happy to see road humps up Gilly Street too, because Giles Street, because that would be something. But yes, I really think something must be done with that one. And 23,000 to save some lives, good-o. Thank you.
Councillor Henschke.
Thank you. I was going to ask a question as well about the budget. This is an operating OPEX cost, and so it wouldn't affect the rates increase too much, no. Because we were trimming off capital the other week, like, $4,000 and things like that to keep the 5.8%, whatever. Anyway, I do think that we probably have, I'm decided to speak, and there probably is a swathe of data we've got already about traffic in the area, and I think the data we've got already in the office could probably be used immediately to start this traffic investigation anyway. It's probably been collected over the years, and if it does have to be spread into 24, 25, getting the consultants in afterwards, that might be another option. So possibly adding endorses this funding in the 23-24 annual business plan and budget, and adding 24-25 in there as well. Just might straddle a couple of years. because there's a lot of work being done in the city master plan anyway, and the consultants are probably tied up with that. Thank you.
Councillor Davey, another question, or you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. I wish to speak now. Notwithstanding the issues raised about the budget, I too agree that this is a high priority decision, I think, and piece of work. While I don't support speed humps at all, and I think they're very costly and intrusive, I believe there are very many examples around metropolitan Adelaide of where the 40k per hour speed limit does work well, especially once it's established. Just drive through Westbourne Park, Unley. There's so many areas where 40k per hour really slows down the traffic, and it's a much more cost-effective way than putting in chicanes and speed humps. I had no idea that there was so much volume of traffic and the complexities of it at these intersections, and then causing all of this through traffic into McGill and Kensington Gardens. I do recall the discussions that we had about when the master plan was being discussed, and I know that because my ward, our ward with Kensington Park and McGill was already experiencing huge volumes of rat running and through traffic through our streets, so we lobbied very hard for the 40k per hour, and we've just gone through that consultation. I don't believe it's any less important further up McGill Road and the parade into Kensington Gardens and McGill, and I think we should go down this track. I think one of the things that I seem to recall that delayed this was the McGill Village master plan and all of that, the McGill Village project, and I think that everyone was keen for that to be completed and to see the results of that and how it was working before we put in this trial, but I think that was probably an error in retrospect. So with all of these volumes, the risks to the school children and the growth in the schools, I think it's imperative that we go ahead with this, so I'll be supporting this tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Wilkins.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank the two gentlemen, for Mr Eaton and Mr Wiley, for coming in, illustrating the urgency of this motion and the need for it. I, as a teacher, think this is critically important, and also I'm happy to support it because we also have a rat running problem down in the inner city suburb of Eastwood, and we're doing something in the next phase. So I think this is critical, and particularly if we can get Campbelltown and the Adelaide Hills Council on board as well. And you actually can't take any chances when it comes to children and traffic and congestion all in the one area. It is just something waiting to happen. So I do support it, and thank Councillor Harvey for bringing it to us.
Councillor Hallett, do you wish to speak now?
Yes, if I can. Thank you. The reasons I wanted to second Councillor Harvey's motion are based on my personal experience and information provided by residents living in McGill and Kensington Gardens. The McGill and Kensington Gardens proposed 40k precinct has 2 schools, as well as a university campus adjacent, as well as shops, community facilities dissected by 2 high traffic roads, McGill and Penfold. As such, it is a very high pedestrian zone, especially during peak periods. I have experienced dropping off and picking up children from McGill Primary School and observed some near misses and some frustrated and impatient drivers. The streets of Kensington Gardens near the school are narrow and congested. If you arrive after 8:30, you will be very lucky to find a street park. Then you have to wrangle 2 or more boisterous children, prams, toddlers, along extremely narrow footpaths up to Penfold Road and the pedestrian crossing. It would be so easy for a child to lose their balance or footing and tumble onto the road with disastrous results. The pedestrian crossing takes ages to change, and the kids and adults will run and take risks in order to ensure they catch the green signal. In the meantime, stop traffic is anxious to move on. While all that's happening, rat runners are finding ways to use those narrow streets and so they can avoid delays. It really is a recipe for disaster or a tragic event. Often the most identified issue when I was door knocking during the election campaign was the speed of traffic taking shortcuts through minor residential streets and an increase in the amount of rat runners. Since Councillor Harvey and I were elected, there have been a number of residents who have approached us about the safety of children in this area and the increased demand on alternative routes through those suburbs to avoid the perceived delays. For those reasons, I am urging members to support the recommendation. I think a 40k encourages increased cycling and pedestrians and encourages kids to walk to school. And in regard to what Councillor Jones said, I ask a question is, can we afford to wait? Thank you.
There are a couple of people who hasn't spoken yet. Do they wish to speak? That's Councillor Zing and Councillor Jennings. If not, I will go back to Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all for your thoughts and input to this important vote. This motion is all about keeping our community of all age groups safe. They deserve it and they need it. I'm not asking for your support on something frivolous, but on something that should have been included, addressed and supported last year. 5 other Burnside suburbs were supported on this matter. This is not a matter of sneaking something into the budget, but a necessity. Obviously, we all gave up budget bids. We all know that. However, this is an issue of safety and saving lives, and it cannot come soon enough, as we've heard tonight. I'm asking for your support on safety, so please support this motion. Thank you.
I put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Motion is carried. Division's been called. Those who supported the motion, please stand. Councillor Jennings, Wilkins, Davey, Zing, Henschke, Harvey, Hallett and Turnbull. Those against? Dawes and Jones. Thank you very much. Will you be still presenting your petition? Okay, thank you.
That will be the next meeting.
Right, thank you. Now, the next item is schedule of fees and charges. Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor. Item schedule of fees and charges. I have a couple of amendments to this motion. And I've left you all, while this comes up on the board, I've left you all an illustration, just a little handout on your desk of some of the examples that I'll be talking to for fee increases. So I thank the staff for all the work undertaken to update these fees and charges. It's an annual process. But the reason I've moved, and I support all of them, except for, as I'll read out, the mini-skip permit, which I think needs to be increased so that a 14-day permit needs to be $555, up to a 14-day permit with rapid processing and less than 3 business days notice, $750, an additional 7 days or part thereof, $350. For shipping or storage container permit, a 7-day permit application, more than 3 days notice, $1,275. 7-day permit application, rapid processing, $1,400. An additional 7 days or part thereof, $1,350. and C, the hoarding per metre squared or part thereof per week or part thereof, $200. As you can see in these illustrations, these are just but two that I've had recently in Leabrook. The first one is what's an illustration of hoarding, and this is where there is a huge development underway, and for several months now, the developers have encroached. I don't know if they had a permit. I think they did originally, but they've been allowed to locate their toilets on the footpath overlapping the verge and their site office overlapping their verge. I think they should pay for this privilege, and handsomely, especially as this has alienated, as you can see in the illustration, alienated the roadway and the footpath for many months, and the damage that's been done is just incredible. I think we should be making them plan much better for their developments. This has meant many aged residents, school children have had to use the road, and this in Stattenborough Street has been alienated for many weeks. The other example is a mini skip in Kensington Park, and this is understandable if people want to clear their gardens or are doing some upgrades at home, but as you can see in the illustration, they take up half the road. They're just renting our roadway, possibly damaging it as well, and I think we should be getting people to pay for this use of these roads. So hopefully you'll support this. This is the reason for it's user pays. For many years we've allowed people to use our roads, footpaths and verges without compunction, but with the amount of work that's being done in homes, the amount of development work, I think it's got a bit out of hand, and I think it should be user pays. So my motion to increase these fees addresses that. I hope you'll support it. Thank you.
I seek a seconder.
Yes.
Councillor Wilkins, you wish to speak now?
Absolutely happy to do this. Thank you, Councillor Davey, for drawing our attention to it. Hoarding per 1 square metre or part thereof per week or part thereof is only $2.50. $2.50. I think when you see examples of hoarding, as has been passed around, in a prime residential street and the toilets are on the footpath, I think it's appalling, quite frankly. And mini skips, they should be filled up within that 14-day and then gone. And once again, up to 14-day permit is $55. Heaven forbid. Builders can make sure that they're working more efficiently, I think. I do support this. Thank you.
Councillor Hensch.
Thank you. A question to clarify this bits of this motion. So the example I'm thinking about is the Burnside Village redevelopment and Sydney Road footpath is occupied by officers for the construction of the project, and I've had residents from my ward in Toorak Gardens who find it difficult to cross through there, and they've raised this with me and said they've got their officers taken up the whole footpath. We have, so the question is would this cover it as well? And there was another construction in Dulwich as well that consumed a whole footpath for a year, and everyone had to walk on the road. Is there a fee there?
Through Madam Mayor, whilst I understand Councillor Davies' sentiment for this, I think Council needs to be very careful, and I'm just going to share an example with you to understand the magnitude of what is being proposed. And I'm not going to talk about mini skips. I think I'm actually quite happy with that. No issue with that. I just want to talk about this hoarding increase. Just on a standard residential block, assuming 40 square metres of hoarding space, currently it would be $100 a week fee. That would be with this proposed increase, that fee goes to $8,000 a week. So how long does a house take to build?
Oh, there was one in my mother-in-law's street that's 2.5, been going 2 years now.
Let's just be conservative a minute and say 52 weeks. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, that's a year.
So if I say, at the minute, 52 times 100, you got $5,200. The new charge, for my example, adds, wow, just make sure my maths is correct, $416,000 to the cost of building a property.
If you're on the footpath.
If you're on the footpath. No, that's okay. I just need council to be aware of what you're proposing. Sorry, Councillor Davey, what you're proposing.
It's right, it's a deterrent.
So that would now, and I'll have to have a look what it would mean for Burnside Village's development. But I just want to share that with you, that's all. Thank you.
Can I ask a question of our planning expert? What would the implications be for planners, or for planning approvals with this kind of imposition or current imposition? Does it have an impact at all?
Through the Mayor, it's difficult to say. On average, if you think about current hoarding fees, a 20-metre width of a property or a verge and 1 to 1.5 metres wide, you'd be looking at an average 30 square metres of hoarding for a development, where in particular they don't have the ability to hoard on site, as it were. So that will place a significant increase on the fees for developing. You'd be looking at an increase from $75 per week up to about $6,000 per week. And as you can imagine, it would be there for a number of weeks. So I think this would potentially have quite an impact, a negative impact on development and the cost of development in the city of Burnside.
I was just wanted to follow that up with a question. I mean, the house next door to my mother-in-law's place, there's no room for any hoarding at the front of the property anyway. They haven't been doing anything on the footpath or the verge, but there would be no space, and you can't hoard anything at the back because there's no vehicular access. It's a narrow walking space. So I could see potentially this having a major impact on planning. The other question I wanted to ask is in relation to...
Excuse me, I had a question.
No, bin. I'll just finish this, Councillor Davey. And that is, what would it actually cost for people? My concern is people, if they don't use a bin or if they don't use some other form of storing their stuff, how does this cancel out or compare to them dumping things and leaving their stuff on the actual verge without even being in a container? Because the penalties need to be comparative. Do you understand what I'm getting at? Yeah.
Yep, through the Mayor. I believe illegal dumping could become a greater issue. At the moment, our permits are based upon the recovery of administrative costs involved in issuing the permit. So by adding $1,000 for each permit category, that again will have a significant impact on people that are trying to do the right thing and have their clean-up. So potentially there we do risk the increase of incidents of illegal dumping. I don't have examples of what the cost of that will be, but if you can imagine the reporting of the complaints, action to go out and clean up that illegal dumping, it would be quite significant.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I've had some questions also in terms of what is the current fee that's generally charged for hoarding for a house that is being developed? Perhaps like the one on Stattenborough Street that's been there for months.
So through Madam Mayor, I think just to use Mr Cooper's example, I think we're saying 30 square metres. So if I just do that little sum, just excuse me for a minute, I'll work my phone out.
So what if you use that example?
I'm not sure if we're aware of the length of the frontage there. Would the team be able to estimate for me the length of that frontage?
through the Mayor, if I may take that question. The current fee that we have in place is 10 square metres for a monthly rental at $31. The assessment that was undertaken for this one was to take in on neighbouring councils and see what they do. And we ended up going from $31 per month for 10 square metres to $100 per month, 10 square metres. And that sits in the middle, or actually is comparable to Adelaide City, and is about half of what Unley charge. So currently Unley is sitting at $260 per 10 square metres. Adelaide City is $105 per 10 square metres. And so we'll be looking at, under this new arrangement, or as it was proposed, it would be $100 per square metres. Now, in terms of the Statton Borough property, they're currently under the old arrangement, and they're getting charged $31 per month for 10 square metres. And I'm guessing by the frontage on that, they're probably getting charged 60, maybe just shy of $100 per month.
Did you want to say something? Councillor Dawes.
Yeah, a question for administration. Is there any council that we can compare us with here? I don't mind bumping up these fees at all, but are we the only one that are going to do it? Is there any, like, what does Unley do? What does Mitcham do? Can anybody give us any sort of comparison?
Through Madam Mayor, I think I was given an example of Salisbury. Just remind me what that figure was. Per
10 square metre?
But we need in a suburban, what does, I mean, that's the most desirable. They're just so soft, I mean, I just...
Somebody's building a $4 million house. My block's 9 metres in width.
It's just so unfair. There's real equity issues.
Through the Mayor, just a clarification, Councillor Dawes, are you referring to the hoarding fee or the skip bin fees?
The three. I can't hear you, sorry.
All three? Okay. I can answer the hoarding fee one.
Oh, good.
Because I just did that, so I'm happy to do that again. So we compared ourselves, so currently Campbelltown charge and Unley charge. Now Campbelltown charge $100 per 10 square metres, where we charge currently $31 per 10 square metres per month. Unley charge $206 per 10 square metres per month. So the suggested increase from where we are at the moment is from 31 to 100, which puts us on par with our neighbour. So that's just for the hoarding.
Councillor Davey.
It was just another question in terms of clarification about...
Might be best to wait till...
Yes, I'll
yeah. And then Councillor Jones, did you wish to speak, or you have a question as well?
I'm going to speak.
Councillor Davey has another question.
I'm sorry, Councillor Davey.
Councillor Davey, you've got your question now.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Could I just have some clarification about those figures, because I couldn't hear what was said. So there was a comparison between Campbelltown and Unley and this figure, I believe. If you could share that with us.
Certainly. So if we can just clarify for Councillor Davey the Unley and Campbelltown figures again, purely for the hoarding.
Yeah, close to the mic. I'm going to turn mine on.
As I was previously using, I'll use the microphone again. So currently, under our current arrangements, Burnside charge monthly per 10 square metres at a charge of $31. In comparison, Unley charge $260 for 10 square metres per month. Adelaide City charge 105 per 10 square metres per month. My area on Campbelltown, they don't charge anything, and the only one I can find was Tea Tree Gully, and they don't charge anything either. So those are two neighbouring councils that we compare to. So the uplift from $31 that we currently charge per 10 square metres per month is to 100, and that aligns us with Adelaide City.
Can I let Councillor Jones speak, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Davis?
Well, sorry, I was going to speak, but I've got a question to Mr. Harvey. If we're charging $200 per square metre, for 10 square metres, that's $2,000 a week, not 100. This is getting a bit like the rates.
If I can clarify, there's been some confusion because the figures that were quoted were monthly figures, and what's quoted in the document this evening is a weekly fee. So, just for absolute clarity, I'll just work it through for you, and I'm going to refer to weekly fee, as that's what we're alluding to here. Our weekly fee now is $2.50 per square metre, and if you multiply that out, that's our $100 per week for 10 square metres. Now, when we're referring to the other councils, that's the $100 that we're referring to when we're hearing figures of $67. And what was the Adelaide City figure, sorry, team? Adelaide City is 100, wasn't it?
Yep, so through the Mayor, sorry, if I go back to the weekly figures for you, I've got them here. So the weekly figures were $250 was the uplifted fee that we're talking about now for us. $2.45 per week for Adelaide City and $6.50 per week for Unley.
Per 1 metre squared. Adelaide City is, I'm sorry, Councillor. What was the figure for Adelaide City?
Just have to put the stuff on the land they own, not on footpath.
So our fee is talking about square metres per week is $2.50, right? Yep. So I want to be consistent, I want to tell the council the same metric.
I am going to suggest that we consider starting a break when this motion is completed.
So,
All right, so think about it.
Madam Mayor,
Yep,
I'm now going to share consistent metrics.
right.
So, in your documents this evening, administration were proposing for 1 square metre per week a cost of $2.50.
No, 200.
No.
No, what administration?
What administration? Right, sorry, I shut up.
1 square metre. So 1 square metre per week, $2.50. For comparison, Unley City Council is $6.50. Adelaide City is $2.45. And currently we are sitting at 78 cents. So we are proposing somewhat of an increase, but we are still below Unley, who are sitting at $6.50. Certainly. Yep. Councillor Davey, just in your estimation, is the block that's on a standard residential block? Kind of.
No, but that's the point. We've got so many issues. This is a huge block in Stafford Street, so I think it's a double block.
Okay.
I can't remember if 2 houses were knocked down to build it.
Well, I'm going to make an estimation that they're using about 2.5 metres of the footpath there. Does that sound a reasonable width? No. The width of it. Yeah. So I'm just saying, if we assume that was 2.5 metres wide, and assuming it was a 20 metre width, that's 50 square metres that they are using up. So if we said 50 square metres for the calculation, 50 times 2.5. Oh, sorry, you want the current charge?
Yeah, current.
50 times 0.78. So they have been charged $39 per week at the minute. Our current proposal, 50 times 2.5, brings that to $125 per week.
Sophisticated toilet block, isn't it? Ladies and gents as well.
Well, other than the shitty footpath.
No, I was just clarifying, if I may, Madam Mayor.
Yeah.
I was just clarifying with the team as to why perhaps we didn't recommend $6.50 as per Unley, and it was deemed that this was a midway point in the increase from our low fee, with the view that I guess perhaps it could increase in latter years. So if we were to do the calculation on $6.50 times by 50, the fee would be $325 per week, as opposed to our current 39 and our proposed 125.
Councillor Jones, have you got another question, or would
No,
you
I'm
wish
going
to
to speak.
speak now?
Look, colleagues, I for one salute Councillor Davey. $31 a month for that. What a joke. If I was the developer, I'd say, can I have the whole street, please? I'd make money hiring out public toilets. And then we've got this claim that it will make development in Burnside more expensive than in Unley. Did you hear that? That was the sound of me playing the world's smallest violin. I don't care. This is an outrage. We've just had the previous debate. Won't someone think about the children? Who's walking on this footpath when it's covered by builders' rubbish for months, if not years on end? Councillor Davies' motion will put a stop to this nonsense. We'll get our footpaths back. And if people won't use the land that they're developing to put this stuff on, they should be charged an appropriate fee by council to use public land. So, look, for me, this is open and shut. This seems an entirely reasonable proposal from Councillor Davey. We've been undercharging these developers for far too long, and I hope you support the motion.
Councillor Davey.
Yes, thank you. The comment that this would increase dumping in our streets, is that legitimate, or I think
my
that,
question,
or did that mean...
My question was just a what-if, looking at comparison, not suggesting one way or another.
So that was in line with the mini
Yeah, it was more to do
yes.
with the bins, because I was concerned if we hit too hard with those kind of shipping containers that those contents would just be, and we know that's happened in Glenunga, in your previous term of office, Councillor Wilkins, when builders were dumping all of their building refuse on the verge for weeks at a time. And that was my concern in terms of trying to balance out and weigh that up. Not any suggestion in it.
So the hoarding issue is something totally different. And I thank the staff for doing those calculations. I'll wait to hear other people's comments and then I'll sum up, if I may.
Yes, Councillor Dawes, you're next.
Yeah, look, I do agree with an increase, but we can't go from $55 to $550 for the mini skip, and we can't go from $275 to $1,275. I just think it's too much. I would agree with a doubling over the next 3 or 4 years to make a point, but I just can't agree to such a huge increase. I had no notice of this at all. In some ways, I wouldn't mind us delaying this until the next meeting. Same with the hoarding. If that was 200 per square metre, that's too much. I'm happy to go to 650, the same as Unley, but let's be fair and reasonable here. Let's be fair and reasonable. That's all I'm saying.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? I have no one on my screen, so therefore I'm going back to Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, everybody, for your input. I think I appreciate what people are saying, that they haven't had notice, but we don't get notice where we're taken advantage of, and I think we have had a bit of a free-for-all. I appreciate the work that the staff do in terms of trying to keep track of all of this. We have got development going on right, left and centre in Burnside. We are a divine area to live in, so people want to live here. They're knocking down houses right, left and centre. They're taking over our footpaths and our streets to utilise and facilitate their development like this. This isn't unusual. I'm sure you've all got examples in your areas. And I think we have to use this as a deterrent. We can raise fees in all sorts of areas without much cost, and we do. I mean, we do with rates and all sorts of things. I think when people find out that we have levied these increases, they will be more careful with their development. They will design their developments better with our staff and the support of our staff in development and planning. They will be told they're not permitted to put their staff toilets on our verges for weeks and months on end, or their site offices, or that they will be able to fence off with padlocks large areas of our footpaths so that the aged residents who live in this area can't walk. They have to go around onto the road to get to the shops. I think use, as in the example with the mini skips, I think it's unreasonable that people expect they can hire a huge mini skip and take up half of a small suburban street for a week while they clear out their garden. I just think we've been very slack, quite honestly. And I think we've got to put some deterrence in, and if that means raising the fees to these levels, I think we can sustain it. We're not doing it anywhere near as... We're certainly increasing it over and above other councils, but we are an inner suburban council where people want to live. We've got huge volumes of traffic, we've got huge damage being done to our infrastructure, and as you can see in this photo, the bluestone curbing has all been destroyed, the footpaths and paving's been destroyed. I mean, there's just no end to it. So I think it's entirely reasonable. And when you look at a $4 million house being built, this is pocket money, really. So there are lots of equity issues. I think we can hopefully improve our development practices and save our streets for our residents and our business, and hope you'll support this. Thank you.
All those in favour? Sorry, Councillor Hallett, you need to turn your microphone off.
I want to.
Sorry, no, it's too late. You had to ask or to speak prior to the summing up of the debate. You didn't have your name on the screen when I asked Councillor Davey to summarise the debate, hence we have moved on. So there's no comment, no commentary, no clarification. I'm just going to ask again, please raise your hands if you support the motion. Those against? The motion's carried. Yes, I suggest that we do have a break at this point in time. Unless there's any opposition, I'm going to just declare that there's a 10-minute break from now. It's 9:16, we resume at 9:26. Right, meeting resumed. Sorry, I'm a little late. I lost my keys. Next one is Councillor Davey, again, 11.4, draft asset management plans.
Thank you, Mayor. So I've moved an amended motion tonight, which I'll read out for people at home who may not have heard it. I move that Council endorses the draft and asset management plans as provided in attachments A, transport, B, stormwater, C, buildings, and E, plant. 2, endorses the draft asset management plan D, open space, with the inclusion of the following to be added as key elements. A, acknowledgement of the environmental importance of green open space to the City of Burnside community and the importance of resources to preserve this. B, more detailed information regarding the importance of heritage open spaces in the City of Burnside, such as Hazelwood Park, Beaumont Common and Alexandra Avenue. C, reference to the impact of climate change, the importance of maintaining the tree canopy, understory plantings and biodiversity within open space and for inclusion in the glossary. D, reference the need to maintain and protect bird and wildlife. And C, cross-reference to the Urban Forest Asset Management Plan and any other council strategy, plans and policies covering open space. And 3, endorses draft asset management plan F, urban forest, with the inclusion of the following to be added as key elements. Acknowledgement of the importance of trees as an essential part of the history, culture, heritage and livability of the City of Burnside, which contribute to the character of our city and play a vital role in our wellbeing. And could I just correct the spelling of livability? It's heritage and live in that second line. L-I-V-E-ability. B, the impact of climate change and urban densification on the urban forest and tree canopy and the need for renewal and resource allocation for this asset. C, the definition of the tree amenity value formula as adopted by council resolution in the glossary. And D, cross-reference to any other strategy documents such as the urban tree strategy. So thank you. That's a bit lengthy, but there's so many asset plans all included in this motion. And I'm moving this way because I think these are just some small corrections to include omissions in the draft, particularly the draft open space asset management plan and the urban forest asset management plan, because while there has been an introduction to the whole lot of the asset management plans, they are standalone documents as management plans. And I think it's also key that we must also reference the City of Burnside strategic plan, Burnside 2030, as a major driver of these asset management plan. In open spaces, I think we need to really demonstrate that the green natural spaces that we have are community values very highly, and we all know that, but I think we need to include that in our asset management plan. It doesn't show many of the structures located in our open space. It focuses on the structures in open space, but not so much the open space itself. So my point is that we need to emphasise as well that these structures are located in this green open space. While this is important, it's the green space and the trees which our broader community values so much in open space. So I also asked that if we could have at least 50% of the photos in the draft asset management plan that goes out show green open space and trees and not just the built infrastructure. Moving on to the urban forest asset management plan, it doesn't give enough emphasis to the fact that we are addressing management of our most beloved asset. We must demonstrate the effects of climate change and really ensure that this is centre of tree management, because we know that presents one of the major problems, and its effects, plus how we intend to restore and improve our native vegetation and habitat and ensure biodiversity is protected. Biodiversity isn't even mentioned. We also need to acknowledge up front that trees are an essential part of the city of Burnside, contribute to its character, increase the livability of our city, and play a vital role in our well-being. We also need to talk about them as assets, and I appreciate that they have been incorporated in the asset management plan, but we need to proactively demonstrate our commitment to their protection and renewal. Could we also, in the final document that goes out, please also reference the Disability Access and Inclusion Plan in these documents and include reference to any other statutory obligations we have in terms of management of our assets, particularly the heritage ones as well. So hopefully someone will second this and you'll support it. Thank you.
I seek a seconder. There's no seconder. Councillor Jennings, please use your microphone. Do you wish to speak on this?
I'll reserve my right.
Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Councillor Dawes.
Just an addition for Councillor Dovey to consider. I think this goes to community consultation. We endorse for community consultation, but I don't see it with your changes that you made. So go back to number 1 if you could, Helen. I think at the top there, if we could add that. Endorses, for community consultation. It's a suggestion from me. Okay.
Is there any, Councillor Hallett?
I'm not sure where exactly this fits, but I'm going to say it now, after having missed out last time, is each of the asset management plans has a page that says frequently asked questions, and right at the top it says what is an asset, and I would like to see tree added into the description of what an asset is, because it basically, again, it talks about what it says. An asset is an item of property owned by the council, regarded as having a financial value. Well, yes, trees are that. Council's assets range from roads and footpaths to buildings, playgrounds, stormwater infrastructure and street furniture. And I view trees as being just as important as each of those descriptions. But I'm not sure how it relates to Councillor Davies' recommendation, whether there would be a separate recommendation that trees is added to the asset description or something different, or it just gets changed.
Is that a question or is that
Through you, Madam Mayor, just to simplify the process for this evening, if council's happy for that change, I'm happy just to ensure it happens without needing to put it in the motion. I'm happy to commit to that.
Councillor Dawes.
A question, and to one of the less read probably asset plans on stormwater, I'm wondering if I can ask the group manager, on page 115, there's a huge increase in projected capital expenditure in 2.5 million. I'm just wondering what that was in relation to, if I could just ask that question. So on page 115, there's a graph there indicating a very high peak.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll refer that to Mr. Kent.
Through your worship, bear with us. We're actually just checking the data behind the asset management plans. As you would imagine, there's a significant amount of information that goes into developing these plans, so bear with us 2 seconds. We may have to take it on notice, but I will confirm with you shortly. Through your worship, the simple answer is we have a large number of stormwater pipes that are due to be replaced due to the end, reaching the end of their asset life.
Councillor Henschke, just need to turn your microphone.
Thank you. I have a question. Agenda page 92 and plan, asset management plan page I can't see what the page number is on that, but anyway, it's on our agenda, page 92. It talks about levels of service inputs. My question is, the community say their feedback is that our footpaths, they believe that the 67% of our community think that they're safe, and 71% say they're well maintained. I was wondering whether it would be helpful to give a reader a benchmark comparison with some other councils, if that exists, just to give people context to say, well, 71% of our footpaths are well maintained, the other 30% aren't, but that's okay. Likewise, 67% of our footpaths seem to be safe, but that's okay. Should we be striving for 90%? I don't know. Could the administration enlighten us? Thanks.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll refer it to Mr. Cant.
Through your worship, the inclusion of the community survey feedback is provided as an example to demonstrate that we are, for the most part, providing a service that is accepted by the vast majority of our community. We have set service intervention levels for each of our assets, and that's how we've based our renewal process over this 10-year period. If that number started to slip over a period of time, we would certainly look to revisit that at that stage. But giving a percentage of an aim for community feedback, I'm not sure is appropriate for an asset management plan.
My question is, does monitoring and management of pollution events come into the stormwater management asset plan? And I'm thinking of things like where we have mining spills into our creeks.
I'll refer that to Mr. Cant.
Through your worship, no.
Hang on just a minute. Councillor Hart, you need to turn your microphone off because that messes up. Okay.
Through your worship, no, unless it has a detrimental impact to the asset condition itself. These asset management plans are designed to ensure that it's fit for service and to meet the service provided by the entire city. Pollution events is a separate process completely, and we would work directly with our partners such as the EHA on that one, and the EPA.
Councillor Henschke.
A question, again, I read somewhere, I can't locate it right now, but there was a short sentence regarding the heritage bluestone guttering. And we had in the last term of council, we had a workshop, online workshop during COVID, that's right. And there was some indication there was going to be some change in policy or work done on this, but would could the asset management plan be a bit more expanded on the restoration of bluestone curbing in heritage areas?
Refer to Mr. Cant.
Councillors who were part of the previous council will no doubt remember following that workshop, we represented the bluestone curbing policy to council.
Just a minute. Councillor David, can you turn your microphone off, please?
Oh, I just wanted to ask.
We represented that policy to council following that workshop, and council had a policy position adopted as part of that. In terms of the asset management plan, we look at the asset class as curbing across and gutters across the entire city, but we don't break it down specifically into blue stones versus other types as such as that. That's a policy position which we follow and adopted by council.
Now, Councillor Davey, you have a question?
Thank you. I just have a couple of questions. There's no, our previous asset management plan, asset management strategy, which is still current, I assume, that talks about how we'll deliver on the strategy. There's no mention in the asset management plans of what formula we'll use to fund these and allocate funding for them. Can you remind us how that will happen, please?
Through Madam Mayor, I'll refer it to Mr. Cant.
Through your worship, I understand that you are talking about the unit of rates that was included in the previous asset management plans and not necessarily included as part of this one. The reason for not including this is because that's set by the industry or through experience in terms of what we believe is likely to be the rate for replacing our asset over a 10-year period. And we weren't looking to necessarily consult on that with the community because it's based on industry-known rates. However, we have used those rates to set the estimated fees for the replacement of those assets over that period of time.
Councillor Davey, you have another question?
Thank you. So a follow-up question is, so where does the current asset management strategy 2021-2026 fit in? Because that's a fabulous document. I especially love all the diagrams and pictures. And it's linked to the strategic plan. And it actually talks about, and it's got one of those lovely circular diagrams. So how do these complement each other? Or should this be referenced in the draft documents as well, so that we know how to complete the circle?
Through worship, the strategy sits at the top of these plans, and the plans feed into it from directly below it. Much like the Burnside 2030 has action plans on how we're going to deliver the high-level drivers of the strategy. That's how these asset management plans work in with the strategy itself.
I've got another question. The other thing that's mentioned throughout these are technical performance standards, and I'm not clear about those and where we find those and how we measure against those. Do we have some form of those, especially where it comes to environmental issues, trees, open space, plantings? That seems to be problematic.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I was distracted. I'll refer to Mr. Cant.
Through your worship, we may take it on board and actually improve the definition within the glossary to clarify that position. That's a fair question. In many examples, it's talking about Australian standards, which sets the quality of work. In the absence of an Australian standard, we will use a council policy position.
Now, Councillor Davey.
And one final question. What the other thing that's mentioned on page 88 is that we use the Customer Request Management System, our CRN, for determining when there is an issue. Page 88 cites that. I'm not actually sure what that system is and how it fits into this. Can someone please clarify that for me?
I'll get further clarification, but the CRM system is our standard customer request management system that when a customer rings into the City of Burnside, if they have a request of us, or whatever the nature, but particularly in this case for maintenance of an asset, we input it into our customer request management system, and that manages it internally for us and triages it in terms of our response timelines and our commitments we've made to the community. Absolutely, that's correct.
Now, Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everyone, for your contributions, and thank you very much to the staff for all the work that has gone into develop these drafts. There is a lot of work, and I now understand the structures better. Hopefully we can make those small adjustments, particularly for the environmental sense, and our community will be very receptive and make lots of comments. So hopefully you'll support those small adjustments. Thank you.
Those in favour? Those against? Motion's carried. Now can we move on to 11.5, final report, internal review. Sorry, that's Councillor Davis.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I have a motion for this one. And it reads, I'll read it out, that Council notes the report and advises the applicant of the review and Council's decision. 2, discontinues the bin tagging program. 3, undertakes a review of the curbside waste management policy to include clarification that appropriate food waste is permitted material for the purpose of definition of green organics in Burnside's Waste Management Bylaw 2018. 4, undertakes a review of the City of Burnside Waste Management Bylaw 2018 to ensure that appropriate food waste is permitted to be placed in the green waste organics container. And 5, undertakes a comprehensive community education and promotion campaign, including for those with English as a second language, to encourage placing of food waste into green organics waste bin for collection. I was amazed that we actually, and pleased to receive and review this report because I was amazed that someone actually complained. When I was campaigning in the most recent council elections, I had constant complaints, and I have anecdotal ones as well, about bin tagging and people interfering in people's bins. It's just not popular. And I went along with it thinking, well, we've put a program in place, we've got funding for it, and it ascertains what's in bins. However, reading the review was very interesting in terms of the actual objections that were articulated in the review, and particularly the concerns that the residents had about the confusion about whether they could opt in or opt out of the bin tagging program, and also the privacy issues that they raised, where they just didn't feel comfortable with people going through their rubbish. In theory, that should be fine. It's put out and it's public. Once it's out on your verge, it's public rubbish. But I think we can do better. I think, as you all know, I'm a great promoter of weekly collection of our green bins. I think we have to move down that space. I'm really keen to see us have everybody putting their food waste into the green organics bin so it gets recycled and doesn't go to waste to landfill. So I think we should discontinue the bin tagging program. We've got a report coming to us very soon about the logistics of the green waste collection, and I believe that's coming to us possibly next meeting. And so that will be read with interest. It's also interesting that the legal review has tipped us off about the need to update our curbside waste management policy and our waste management bylaw to accommodate appropriate food waste placement in the green waste organics container. So I think this is timely. I think we've done a great deal of work, and I appreciate the work that has been done to date on the bin tagging program. But I think from here on in, the community sentiment has shifted. We need to be really supporting with an education and promotion campaign, supporting our community to be able to differentiate between green waste and waste to landfill, and supporting those who have English as a second language. So hopefully you'll support this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Zing, are you seconding this?
I'm seconding, Mayor, and happy to speak now. Thank you, Mayor, and I also thank Councillor Davey for her motion. I know that bin tagging has given rise to some significant concerns, as noted by residents, and also confusion amongst the multicultural community. Some residents simply have no understanding of what is occurring, and others find it an intrusive process. I also note that at the next council meeting, we should be receiving a report on weekly green bins, and we'll have further conversations on waste management in due course. An education and promotion program will be a beneficial start, as often questions we receive are still, where does it go? We're better off allocating our funds for greater education amongst our diverse community, especially those with English as a second language. Given that the public places increasing importance on reducing the amount of food waste that ends up in useless landfill, council should be making this easier for our householders. The fact is that rubbish collection is core council business, and a review of the bylaws is a positive step. I commend this motion.
Anyone who wishes to speak? Councillor Turnbull.
Thank you, Mayor. Could I please ask a question? My question is of the administration. Could we please have a quick summary of the process of bin tagging in regard to how often and how many are done at a time, and how do you choose which areas? Because I'm sure some of us don't know.
Through Madam Mayor, this report is actually a report that looked at the veracity of council choosing to undertake the process. I'm actually happy to take that on notice, and I'll provide the information separately.
Councillor Hen.
Thank you, Mayor. Would this motion affect East Waste's project funding or any? Have they been engaged with about the possibility of this ceasing by the City of Burnside? Yeah.
Through Madam Mayor, we actually had no intentions to continue with this program. So as it turns out, there would be no adverse impacts on East Waste, and certainly we hadn't envisaged continuing with the program following this point, as it turns out anyway.
Thank you.
It was a university-initiated project in terms of the whole project, and the idea of bin tagging, and didn't only happen within the City of Burnside. Councillor Jones.
I have to say I don't agree with the lawyer's conclusion. The gentleman who complained lives in Beaumont Ward, and he spoke to both Paul and I, and we both said we thought it was opt-in because the first university trial was opt-in, and I remember when we talked about going to this second stage, lots of people saying we didn't agree with the Holfast Bay approach of naming and shaming people. So I have to say I disagree with the lawyers. I think it should have been opt-in. I'm interested because we got the results of the East Waste bin survey back recently, where they effectively look at every scrap of rubbish that comes into them, and that said that, this is pretty astonishing, 70.7% of the material in the red bin in Burnside could have gone in the green bin. That's astonishing. So I have to say, I'm not sure that our bin tagging has been terribly successful, because I'm not sure that 70.7% of bins were getting red, unhappy faces on them, and probably more than that, because that suggests that pretty much everyone's getting it wrong, just some completely wrong, and some slightly less wrong. And also I think the problem with bin tagging is we must have 25,000 households in Burnside. To get round them at 2,000 bins a time will take you 13 years, by which time people will have moved on, and so I'm just not, look, whilst I think it was worth trying the experiment, I'm pleased what the CEO is saying, because I'm not sure it's obviously not been terribly effective. Now, I remember when the university person came, she wasn't very sure that education was very effective either. I'm not, short of charging, actually being able to inspect bins and charging people more for putting green stuff in the red bin, I'm not sure what you can do. And to be honest, if we put less green rubbish in the red bin, the state government would just increase the levy anyway for the fact we were paying them less. So I suspect we can't win anyway. So anyway, I'm going to support the motion.
Councillor Harvey?
I have a question, thank you, Mayor. What is the actual cost included in the budget, please?
Sorry, what was the cost to run this program? Yes. I'll just refer that to Mr. Cant. I'm not sure if we have that information to hand.
We'll have to take that on notice.
Councillor Turnbull?
Well, thank you, Mayor. I've thought a lot about this, particularly from the view of potential invasion of privacy in terms of investigating household waste. However, I feel that the bigger question here is the environmental one. I'm on record as a strong promoter of best use of our green waste bins and diverting green wastes from landfill to composting. In fact, during the period of the previous council, Councillor Dawes and I undertook a promotion on this issue to every household in the Burnside ward. So this matter is not only an environmental one, also a financial one in terms of reducing our landfill costs. How else do we find out about what's in the green bins? So I will support the original recommendation, not this one.
Councillor Wilkins?
Thank you, Your Worship. Clearly my bin hasn't been bin tagged, and I have pleased it didn't really. I have always included green scraps and green cuttings and compostable materials in the green bin. I would suggest that we need to actually produce a sticky label that goes on the lid of the green bin, indicating to all residents who have a green bin, one or two, the type of product that can go in the green bin. Clearly, do it in pictorial form, as I've recently seen in rubbish bins in the Melbourne Convention Centre, which are very effective. Pictorial form, sticky sticker, send it out with a rates notice, cheap as chips, and let everybody know this is what you should be putting in your green bin. Have a demonstration on our website. Bins, what goes in it. The Mayor can be putting green waste in the bin, whatever, but clearly we need to tell people what you can put in it. Previously you couldn't put green waste in the bin, but now you can. Years have gone on. So I think we need to undertake an education program. Thank you.
Well, I agree with your sentiment. There's been an awful lot done in the last few years, Councillor Wilkins, including a number of videos that are online or on the website that have been part of Burnside Highlights, part of the carbon neutral series that Dr. Phil has been doing. There have been many, many, many visuals things. There are also stickers that KeySab hand out that go on the top of your bins. There are all those things, but you can... No, what I'm saying is you can't... There are a lot of people, in fact, we had someone who came and talked about the issues that they have with second language, and I certainly have talked to people who have that problem with understanding the system. Actually, at the climate change conference only 2 weeks ago, I had a similar conversation with a couple of young Chinese women who had the same problems in terms of knowing and understanding when they're new to the country how the bin system works. And you heard me say to the new citizens at the citizenship ceremony the other night, ask your neighbours how your bins work, what you need to put in the right bin. So these things are, what's the expression about you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And it's about us all. And I have to say, I had some people being very positive about the bin tagging system who said to me we felt so pleased that we'd done the right thing, and it only actually encouraged them to do it better and even more frequently and tell all their friends about it. So, yes, I only had the one complainant, same man, same family from Beaumont Common, and with his belief that his privacy was invaded.
Sorry, my next
Anyway,
300 words
so,
I can make a sentence about.
Councillor Dawes.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I agree with the opt-in comment from Councillor Jones. I just want, we've said it twice already, but it is based on one person's concern with privacy. All I ask Councillor Davey to do is to please share this with us in advance of the meeting, because I'd like to kind of think about this and in detail, because my comments here, and I'd like to give it more time, I received no negative community comment about this bin tagging program. I was included in the bin tagging program, and I wanted to know how well we did or didn't do. And in deference to what Councillor Jones said, the results from the program were excellent. Yes. There was a massive decrease a decrease of food in red bin moving to the green bin. So it did offer those residents an understanding of what they should do. But I'm just a plea, please, with Councillor Davey, can you share in advance some of your changes, because I think that would help the meeting move a bit quicker over the next few months. Thank you.
Councillor Henry.
Thank you. Question for the administration. Regarding point 5, undertakes a comprehensive community education and promotion campaign. I'd like to understand from the administration's point of view what that actually will be. Is it an advertising type of thing with flyers and media and social media and that sort of thing, or is it more like the FOGO approach of it's Holdfast, isn't it? Holdfast have staff that go out to, say, an apartment block and will engage with the owners of the apartment block or the residents and say, okay, you've got 50 bins, let's see if you can reduce that down to 20 red bins and more green bins, and help them along the way. So it's a face-to-face education targeted approach I believe that council does. So can the administration clarify what will be the effective campaign that, and will we have lessons learned from Holdfast, which is what I've heard at another council meeting, that we will be waiting to hear from Holdfast on their outcomes before we act and spend money. Thank you.
Through Madam Mayor, we might have to refer that question back to the mover to gain an understanding of what Councillor Davey is envisaging, and then I'm happy to respond once I hear that.
Right, I have no one else left on the screen, so you want the answer now?
I'd like.
Sorry, Councillor Hallett.
I feel very torn because I think there are benefits to the project, and I particularly point out the reduction of 235 tonnes, and that it saved us $35,000, and that the cumulative landfill total for 22-23 is lower than for the 4 previous years. So to me, it seems to be that there is success. It has had some success. I also have a problem with the privacy issue. But I wonder whether we could still have the program, and then, like other councillors have said, you opt in, or you opt into the program to participate, or you opt out to not participate. And that's well explained when we write to the targeted streets to let them know that they can opt out if they don't want their bins gone through. I understand people being embarrassed about what, there's all sorts of medical products and things that people use, and I can understand they don't want people going through their bin and finding all that.
I have to add, the trucks actually have cameras on and can see everything that goes into their bins anyway, and that's all can be recorded on film. Councillor Harvey. Apologies.
Thank you. I'm just that's all right. I'm just confused. I asked a question before and I didn't quite understand where it landed and what the answer was. Thank you.
Councillor Davey was going to explain it in her summing up at the end. We haven't got to that yet. Correct?
No, Madam Mayor, if I might just ask your indulgence for a moment.
Sure.
It might be good for Councillor David to share that, just in case I need to respond.
Yes.
And I'll perhaps allude to where I'm coming from. If it can be done without any financial resources, like for example through our Focus magazine, that's one thing. If it's envisaged that it's going to be quite comprehensive and require financial resources, I'll have to. Well, the motion will need to articulate how I'm going to get that money. Yep. Thank you.
So, Councillor Davey, before we move on to Councillor Harvey, Councillor Davey, are you able to explain your point 5 of the debate of the motion, please? Councillor Harvey, if you just turn yours off.
Thank you. I was actually going to ask, don't we have the expertise in-house with the communications team who do these promotions and this sort of work? Forgive me my ignorance, but I thought we... No, that side wasn't in question. The collateral can all be produced in-house, so I absolutely agree with you. Our staff are more than capable. It just depends. And for example, in my mind, if I was to do this without incurring any additional cost, I'd be looking at using our Focus magazine and our online tools and perhaps our social media platforms to do this promotion, so that my staff time's already in the budget, so that's fine, and I wouldn't be incurring any additional costs. However, as a contrary approach, if I was to take Councillor Henschke's example of Holdfast Bay's approach, that's very that would go cost prohibitive approach, and I would be seeking some financial resources from council. So that's where my head's at.
So does your proposal go beyond what the CEO has just explained?
No, my proposal is that I just don't think we've done enough education and promotion, and particularly, which my colleague Andy Singh has advised, and I found when I was campaigning for the election, there is community uncertainty and confusion, and especially in our people who don't have English as their first language. So there is and in some of our older citizens as well. So they're the target groups. But the other issue too, while you're considering that, is we have got a report, and you know what's in the report or what you're preparing for it, for our weekly, the logistics of a weekly green bin collection, which I presume is due in 2-4 weeks to council. I don't know what that includes, but I would imagine the results of this would be complementary to that and the work that's being done on that. And I'm happy to be corrected if that's wrong.
Through Madam Mayor, I said the critical thing for me here was just to understand what resources you envisage going into that. So I'm assuming that you're comfortable with what I've said just prior. And I just want to reiterate our understanding that we will take a particular focus on members of our community with English as a second language.
Now, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor. I will support this motion and thank Councillor Davey for amending this. I believe bin tagging is an intrusion on privacy, and surely we can come up with better education to our community than employing people to rifle through random bins and to name and shame. This money included in our budget could go towards funding a better approach with education on waste and the appropriate bins to use. Is this the best that we can come up with? I think we can certainly do better. I believe in support recycling and organics and green waste and placing items in the correct bin. However, I believe education is the key, perhaps with labels on bins, as Councillor Wilkins has already said. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? I've got a clear screen, so Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll sum up. Thank you very much for all your input. Yes, my intention is that, as we know, the program has come to an end. There's no more funding allocated for this. For that, I'm grateful. I think it's timely. There's varying reports of how of the rates of green waste that is going to landfill. We've got one rate quoted in our report, and Councillor Jones cited another report that had a totally different rate. So there are variations on the amounts that are still going into our waste to landfill, which is tragic. So I think within the constraints of our budget, which I recognise, an education and promotion program using our staff who've got the expertise, using online, using focus, and obtaining grant funding. I mean, we've got a state government that I understand is very proactive in this area. There must be funding available through the state government, through Green Adelaide or whatever the latest, their environmental section is, for us to apply for grants to do this promotional work. But I think it's time we moved on to the next stage and really promoted better waste management, better composting, and reducing what goes into our red waste to landfill bins. So hopefully you'll support this, and we can move on to the next stage of getting more rates of green waste into our green bins, and hopefully more regular collection of those. So hopefully you'll support this. Thank you.
Those in favour of the motion? Those against? Motion's carried. We're very close to the needing to call a time extension, and I'm aware that we must do 11.6 tonight before we depart, because it urgently has to be done tonight.
Well, why wasn't item 1 then?
Pardon? Well, we've been a long time going through some of these motions, and it wasn't recommended that we moved anything further forward, but it is now nearly 25, it's 19 past. We will need to, there's still another one, which the minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee are not vital, but we must do 11.6, and that's Councillor Davey. And we're going to run out of time, so I'm going to suggest that I need someone to move that we have an extension for 15 minutes, or until we have finished that item. I also have to just give you a message before we go that relates to ERA.
I'm happy to move. So
all right.
move.
All right, seconded Councillor Dawes. Just 15 minutes, or if we finish earlier.
I don't think we need that.
15 minutes beyond 10:30. 15 minutes beyond 10:30, so that's 11:15. All right, thank you. I've got enough of an indication. Okay. Now, Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe that we should actually move, and I will move, that a change to number 2 of this, and that Council develops employee behavioural standards under Section 120A of the Local Government Act. And deletes the existing two. And moving on to, I think we moved at the last meeting for a behavioural support policy under Section 75 of the Local Government Act for council members, based on the fact that we wanted some guidance about behaviour and rules to follow and all of that sort of thing, because there's so much scrutiny. And I believe that we should also develop and adopt employee behavioural standards for our employees. I think it's, and I acknowledge it's the CEO's responsibility to manage employee matters, but I believe that our employees would benefit from having this standard, behavioural standards, a set of rules for everyone to follow. I believe we've had them in the past. I couldn't just find them checking the policies, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're going down the path of having standards to follow for everything now. So until local government develops, the Local Government Association develops its own set of behavioural standards, I think we should develop our own. I think we did have them in the past, and I think we should develop some using the local government template. I can't see any reason why we shouldn't, and I think our employees would benefit from that. So hopefully you'll support that. Thank you.
I seek a second.
At 1, where it says Chief Executive Officer to manage employee matters and intends to establish a behavioural standards policy at this time. So just delete and does not. Thank you.
No. And delete does not.
Just delete does not and intends to establish.
S on intends.
Thank you.
I don't have a seconder at this stage.
I'll second it. Reserve my right.
Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this?
I'd like to speak, Madam Mayor.
Yes, I think the CEO has a responsibility and a right to speak on this matter of major change.
No, I just need to bring to Council's attention a couple of points. One, the staff currently do have a code of conduct that they adhere to and are required to work under, and that it's a protocol that's managed by myself as the CEO. So there was an incorrect statement to say they don't have anything. And in fact, if you read the report closely, the unions themselves are saying that they do not agree with the proposal that is being put before you at this very moment. The report is very clear, and I think to go any other way starts to work against the Act, which talks about the fact that the staff are responsible to the CEO. The Council does not have responsibility for managing the staff. That is my remit and my remit alone. Thank you.
I was going to say that very same thing. The only person we employ is the CEO. The only person whose conditions and appraisal that we are responsible for is the CEO. If we start moving down the trail of trying to control the behavioural standards of the council, we are going well beyond our realm and our role as elected members. And I feel very, very uncomfortable about the change to this motion. Councillor Jones gets to speak first.
Well, I have to ask the follow-up question to that, noting the folly about discussing this kind of thing at 10:25 at night. Correct. Why is it in the Local Government Act then?
Through Madam Mayor,
I don't have a clear understanding of what they were thinking when they drafted the legislation, but it seems that the legislation was written hurriedly, and whether it was, and I don't know which party it was to placate, but it seems that the ability for council to decide or not to decide was, sorry, I think the only answer I can have is it was hastily written, and they didn't foresee the potential outcomes when it was put forward, and that's why I've gone to lengths to actually put the commentary from the unions in particular in there, so the council has perspective.
Anyone listening at home wouldn't have heard that, because Councillor Davey, you still got your microphone on. Right, Councillor Davey.
I was just asking them, why has this come to us for endorsement? It's only come to us because it's been raised.
Oh, and certainly, and if I can just add to my answer that Councillor Jones raised, the Act is written so that Council has to make a decision, formally make a decision on the matter within 6 months of its election. It's terribly frustrating because it's a flawed piece of legislation if Council resolves differently than what I've recommended. I'm recommending to Council what I believe is the most prudent way forward, and it's only here before you this evening because the Act is requiring me to put it before you. Yeah.
Otherwise, you would have the power and the control to make those decisions on behalf of all of the staff.
I just got my quick.
If it were not for the Act.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. So, in essence, this wouldn't have come before you unless the Act required me to put it before you.
Councillor Davey, you have another question?
Is there any reason why we can't just roll over the current employee conduct protocol until we get further?
Through Madam Mayor, and I'm glad you raised that, Councillor Davey.
Councillor Dawes, can you just turn your microphone on?
Point two is actually what I was alluding to I was alluding to that very point. So I'm just noting that I'll continue to use my existing Code of Conduct protocol, but I will review it once the LGA produce their protocol. Because I do acknowledge that if the LGA do arrive at for example, a best practice protocol, I think I should look at that. So that's why I deliberately included point two, to give the council, I guess, a level of comfort that, as your CEO, whilst we do have an employee code of conduct, which I might add the unions are very happy with, I do want to give you a level of assurance that I am trying to maintain a best practice approach for council and the management of our staff.
Councillor Dawes.
Yeah, I know it's been said we have one employee, and that's the CEO. We don't employ the other 170. The CEO does that. I look at 22.2, which is talks about the AWU, and I never like going against unions. I'm sorry. I'm in support of what the CEO recommends here, because that's a very clear statement to me, 22.3, that they believe that council members should allow management employees to negotiate on-site matters as they have a clear understanding of any issues at hand. And based on that statement, I just can't support Councillor Davies' motion. I believe the original officer's recommendation is the one that we should be supporting.
Yeah, I do.
Councillor Davey, you have another question?
Based on all of the information we've got tonight, I'm very happy to withdraw my motion and move in accordance with the CEO's original recommendation, and I believe my seconder is happy to do the same.
I concur, happy to do so.
So I'm happy to move the motion as originally written. Tabled.
Right, so the motion's being moved as originally tabled. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on the matter? Councillor Hallett? No, Councillor Jones was first.
I have to say, I don't know what I'm voting on because I haven't seen the behavioural standards policy that we might be voting to adopt. And, you know...
No, there's no adoption here.
What?
It's not adopting, Councillor
But,
Jones.
yeah, no, I
It's
get it,
continuing to use the existing
but the
until.
local government says we have to decide whether we want to adopt a behavioural standards policy. And I can't see what the behavioural standards policy would say, so how can I vote on it? And why is it being brought in May when we've got 6 months to decide? Why wasn't it brought in February? It's kind of like it's being brought in the last possible meeting at 10:25 at night, so we have to say yes to the officer's recommendation. So I don't think I can support this motion because I don't know what I'm voting on.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I take umbrage to that insinuation that I've deliberately put this at the end of the agenda at 10:25 when I had nothing to do with that, and I'd ask that you retract that statement.
Why is it coming now when we've had 6 months we had to do it?
If you'd allow me to answer the question.
Okay.
It was certainly not my intention to bring it this late, and for that I do apologise. It should have been brought earlier. I acknowledge that, and it is unfortunate that we are this late in the evening. The intent of the legislation is that Council simply signals its intention. There is no intent this evening for Council to actually have adopted its protocol or the protocol, adopt a protocol. And this is the weakness in the legislation. All the legislation is asking is saying, does Council intend in the future to adopt a employee code of conduct, or does it intend to leave it up to the CEO? So it's not actually asking you to actually view your proposed policy or code of conduct. It's simply asking you to determine, do you wish to do it in the future? It's a crazy piece of legislation. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Is Councillor Hallett, you wanted to speak? Wait a minute.
I'm really grateful to Councillor Davies and Councillor Wilkins for withdrawing the motion, because like Councillor Dawes, to me, point 22 carries a lot of significance, and I actually support the original motion.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Then I'd like to go back to Councillor Davey. All right, then I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you very much. I'm going to suggest that we move item 11.7, the minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee, until our next meeting. Unless it's a really quick one. Okay, it's a simple question. Okay.
The question that I wanted to ask was really...
Yeah, move the motion first.
I moved the motion as is.
Right, thank you.
My question is, there's nothing really in this to read or approve. You know, the information is sort of non-existent, and I think, you know, because, so to me, it's really sort of a nothing report.
It may be that, but it actually has to happen, and that most of our the reports on Audit Committee are written in this way, just like our council meetings. They just report the motions that have been carried or not carried on the night, and that's all that is recorded in the minutes. And I'm just checking with Ms Reynolds, and she's nodding, so I'm assuming I've got the answer correct. Right. Thank you. Councillor Dawes, you're seconding?
Yeah, I second it. But the agendas are on the portal.
Yes.
So
yes.
you can...
Yeah, so you can match those.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this? Right. If not, I will go back to Councillor Hallett. Are you happy for me to just put the motion? All right. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? Carried. Just wanted to, last minute, in terms of other business, I have been asked by ERA to bring to your attention a question that I will put in writing tomorrow to you, and that relates to ERA mayors and CEOs want to have a discussion next Thursday night about what the government and the LGA are looking at in terms of feedback. Sorry, not the government, the Electoral Commission and the Local Government Association is looking for feedback on prerequisites for standing for council. Now, I will send you the detail in the email, because during the LGA conference, during the Electoral Commissioner's speech, they are very keen to get feedback from councils as to what they think. Things like having a police check, maybe doing some mandatory training prior to nominating for council. There are 4 items. So what I'm going to send you tomorrow is an email. You'll need to send me, if you've got any responses, any ideas that you want us to discuss with the other era mayors and CEOs next week, that you can get that information to me by Tuesday of next week, so that I have got time to summarise your report and then take it to that meeting of the era group, because the era group want to put in a submission to the Minister. Minister Brock has also called, and Robert Breer from Mayor of Norwood, Payne and St Peters has already met with the Minister, and there were summaries taken at the LGA conference with ideas that people had for submitting ideas. So I will send you a formalised email tomorrow, but I need to have the feedback by Tuesday of next week, so I have time to write up a report for Thursday night. Right. So thank you very much. I'll close this meeting at 10:37.